leading to multiple deaths.
It has more.
House Speaker Mike Johnson tells Fox News Mother Nature will not delay the certification of President-elect Donald Trump's victory.
The Electoral Count Act requires this on January 6th at 1 p.m. So whether we're in a blizzard or not, we are going to be in that chamber making sure this is done.
Johnson's message to fellow House members is clear.
We encourage all of our colleagues, do not leave town, stay here.
The House Speaker says he hopes for full attendance despite the storm. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser says city resources will be used to help clear snow for members of Congress ahead of election certification. Luke Garrett, NPR News, Washington.
North Korea has fired a suspected intermediate-range ballistic missile today. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is visiting South Korea.
We condemn yet another violation of multiple Security Council resolutions with the reported missile launch.
South Korean officials say the missile flew hundreds of miles east and landed in the sea. Blinken's trip comes as South Korea faces a political crisis. Impeached President Yoon Song-yeol briefly declared martial law last month before rescinding that. The country is being governed by an acting president. NPR has learned that Hamas has named a group of Israeli hostages in Gaza that it is willing to release as part of a ceasefire deal under negotiation. As NPR's Daniel Estrin reports from Tel Aviv, the group includes 2 U.S. citizens.
The deal being negotiated in Qatar would have Hamas release 34 Israeli hostages, according to a Hamas official, and Israel would release some Palestinian prisoners and partially withdraw troops from Gaza. Israel wants to know which of the 34 hostages are still alive. A Hamas official tells NPR that the group will reveal that in exchange for unspecified concessions. The hostages under discussion include female soldiers, other women, and about 24 men, including 2 American hostages. Another official close to the talks, also speaking on condition of anonymity, says Hamas will not release all hostages in Gaza because Israel will only agree to a temporary ceasefire. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
The body of former President Jimmy Carter will continue to lie in repose today at the Carter Center in Atlanta. He will be escorted to Washington, D.C. tomorrow. Carter's state funeral is set for Thursday. On Wall Street, the Dow is up more than 200 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The weather has been wreaking havoc at airports around the country today. As of about 20 minutes ago, FlightAware says there were 31 canceled and 40 delayed flights at Logan Airport. If you are traveling today by air, you may want to be in touch with your airline. Meanwhile, the snow and the ice storms in the Midwest and from New York to south of Washington, D.C. are causing lots of problems as well on the roadways. Patriots fans are reacting to the firing of head coach Gerard Mayo yesterday after one season on the job. Many of the Pats faithful had been calling for Mayo's dismissal for months given the team's dismal performance. Patriots' win yesterday in the last game of the season angered fans further since it cost them the first pick in this year's NFL draft. And speaking on his podcast, sports personality and Massachusetts native Bill Simmons had very harsh words for how the franchise handled the whole situation.
The thing that kills me is they fire the coach right after the game. Basically, he's trying to win, and the offensive coordinator, they're trying to win because they don't know if they're going to be there. They're trying to coach for their jobs. Why not get rid of them before the game? Why not put this decision in the hands of people who care about the big long-term picture of the franchise?
Patriots owner Robert Kraft expected to address the situation when he speaks to the press at 1 o'clock this afternoon at Gillette. GBH's Esteban Bustillos will be there. He's on his way there right now. In sports, the Bruins and Celtics are off until tomorrow. Qualifying rounds of the Australian Open start today in Melbourne, Australia, where it's 85 degrees. It's 26 degrees here. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Your Part-Time Controller, the nonprofit accounting specialists, providing financial management services to support stronger nonprofits who make the world a better place. Learn more at yptc.com/NPR.
Houston Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are streaming today. It's day one of our official YouTube stream from here. Alas, not completely. We're going to miss 2 segments, technical difficulties, the Reverends Irene Monroe and Emmett Price, and NPR critic Eric Deggin.
Everything else,
other than that, we will be here, and we're very excited about that. We're back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. Maura Healey, the governor of the Commonwealth, is going to join us for another edition of Ask the Governor from 11 to noon Good morning, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. 4 years ago on this day, a mob of Trump supporters stormed the Capitol building in Washington in an attempt to stop the peaceful transition of power. Biden won the 2020 election. Trump denied that then and now. Instead, he fueled this narrative that the election had been stolen and from those who voted for him. To this day, there's no evidence that voter fraud affected the 2020 election. I feel I got to repeat that. Courts, even those with Trump-nominated judges, agreed with that. Today, this talk about irony. Congress is meeting to certify an election, this time peacefully, returning Trump to power after he won the 2024 election. Our lines are open at 877-301-8970. What do you make of this day, and what are you feeling on this day? Have we moved on, or should we be relitigating January 6th, remembering it as the historical, almost democracy-breaking moment that it is? Or is the right rewriting the history successfully on January 6th? Trump will play some sound for you in a minute. He's calling it a day of love. And are you worried about the pardons that he promises will come for the insurrectionists on day one? 64% of the American people in late November said they opposed those pardons. Let's hope they still do. 877-301-8970. You and I talk a lot about how people in large numbers believe lies in this society. But I guess the question here for me is they don't believe their own eyes either. Almost all of America, other than little children, were watching that day. They saw police officers, law enforcement people assaulted, elected officials, including the vice president tonight, have his life threatened, potentially eliminated. And yet today, the guy who was just elected refers to this. Well, let's actually hear what he had to say, a day of love. Here is Trump with his revisionist history during a Univision town hall. This is October of last year.
Ashley Babbitt was killed. Nobody was killed. There were no guns down there. We didn't have guns. The others had guns, but we didn't have guns. And when I say we, these are people that walked down. This was a tiny percentage of the overall, which nobody sees and nobody shows. But that was a day of love from the standpoint of the millions. It's like hundreds of thousands.
Here's this guy, Aquilina Gonell, who was a Capitol police officer that day. Like many, he wrote in The Hill, other officers who served that day have spent years in mental and physical therapy, have undergone 2 surgeries to heal from those wounds, but that feeling has never truly left me. It has altered the trajectory of my career and my life. Trump and his rioters not only stole my health, but also the livelihoods of me and my fellow officers.
And by the way, did you see where he also said that House Speaker Mike Johnson refuses to put up a plaque that honors the service of those Capitol police officers that were injured that day? And you mentioned that there were...
Because they interfered in the day of love, that's why.
Right, they interfered in the day of love. There's a great piece, it's a long piece, but it's by Dan Barry and Alan Fuhrer in the New York Times.
It is a great piece.
It explains how the violent riot and insurrection, an attempt to overthrow the votes and the government, turned into a day of love. It goes right through it, and it talks about how at the very beginning, a lot of Republicans, including Mitch McConnell, were outraged by what had happened. But then things...
And said Trump was responsible.
Then things continued to change. People like Matt Gaetz, we all remember him. He was the guy that wanted to be the Attorney General until it's found he was involved with underage girls and sex and stuff. He, got on the president's side on this. And then people started saying it was all about Antifa, which is not true. And you had more and more people, Republicans and people like Tucker Carlson, who used to have a show on Fox News, spreading lies about this, and people believed them.
And I assume everybody knows, even though this, I guess, doesn't fit the Day of Love narrative, was it 4 police officers died by suicide in the days and weeks after this event? And it's just, it's amazing to me. And, Joe Biden wrote a piece in the Washington Post that appeared, I think, today. And he says 2 things. Well, he says a lot of things. Violent insurrectionists attacked the Capitol, threatened the lives of elected officials, assaulted brave law enforcement officers. Here's the critical thing. In time, there'll be Americans who did not witness the January 6th riot firsthand, but will learn about it from footage and testimony of that day, from what is written in history books, and from the truth we pass on. We cannot allow the truth to be lost. Well, when Donald Trump, assuming he honors his commitment and pardons some of these insurrections.
Right, he does say there'll be exceptions.
Yeah, on January
Let's hope so.
20th, he says on day 1, he's going to call it a day of love, and I assume there will be a lot of nodding heads. Can I complain about our station of record? Last night, I don't even know the anchor's name on CNN, was interviewing a Republican congressperson from New York about unrelated matters. And before she let the congressperson go, she said, the president of your party, Donald Trump, says he's going to pardon a lot of the January 6 people. How do you feel about this? And she, of course, obfuscated and then went on to say, but let's not ignore, as your question does, I'm paraphrasing, that Joe Biden pardoned rapists, serial killers, and all those sort of things. And of course, the end of the story is the anchor did not correct her. He didn't pardon any of those people. He commuted their sentence from 37 of them from death to life in prison without the possibility of parole, which is different from pardoning someone for a crime they were convicted of committing.
They're not going to get out of jail. And of course, there are people that we know well here in Massachusetts, like Shokar Tsarnaev, who is not going to
Nor is
get
Dylan
life
Roof.
in prison. No, he's going to face the death penalty. And so is the guy that attacked Robert Bowers, the guy who attacked the Pittsburgh's Tree of Life synagogue in 2018. So they're going to still be facing death.
So before we take the calls at 877-301-8970, your answer almost always, and sadly, I'm afraid you're right, as to why so many Americans believe crap that is a pile of lies is, well, they're in this little bubble. They watch Fox News lie. I mean, it doesn't have to be Fox News, Newsmax, whatever. That's all they watch. They lie. That's all they know. They listen to Trump, etc. Everybody who falls into that category saw what happened on January 6th. Do you think there are 5 people in America who haven't seen video of flagpoles being used as weapons against police officers, bear spray being sprayed in their faces?
Some of these people think those were government agents, like FBI people, incredibly. Some of they think that was Antifa. I can't believe we still talk. When was Antifa involved in anything that we actually know Antifa was involved in? I think it's been quite...
well, we know they weren't the provocateurs on January 6th.
Many years, it seems to me. But Jim, did you mention already, maybe you did,
what?
The 64% of Americans, according to the Scripps Ipsos poll, do not favor pardons. And we should also point out that a lot of these people have pled guilty. 1,572 people have been federally charged. Almost 1,000 pled guilty. 250 found guilty in trial, and 645 are convicted and jailed. So not all of them obviously did go to jail. So when President-elect Trump talks about exceptions to these pardons, let's hope he's accepting the people with the sedition charges. Sorry, it's hard for me to say. Big time sentences like 18 and 22 years, and those who were violently guilty of attacking police officers. But I don't know.
And by the way, as you know, most of organized law enforcement in this country endorsed the candidacy of Donald Trump, despite these attacks on their brothers and sisters on Capitol Hill. 877-301-8970. So it's 4 years to the day since the insurrection, or the Day of Love, if depending on your point of view. What are you thinking? Tim in New Hampshire, you're first. Hi.
Good morning, folks.
And you, too.
Happy Monday.
You, too.
So I thought about it all weekend because there was some stuff in the news that I'll get to in a minute, but I am extremely disappointed and kind of really pissed off at 2 men that put us in this position, and those 2 men would be Merrick Garland and Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. And I'm doubly pissed off because now that Joe Biden's doing this retrospective on his administration, he came out in some interview this weekend, I read, that he was also disappointed in Merrick Garland. Excuse me, Mr. Biden, but you were president. And all I can do is lay it up against the president of South Korea, declared martial law to try to kind of overthrow something last month. He was impeached twice. They didn't stop after they failed the first time. They impeached him again. And I read last week that an arrest warrant has been issued.
Tim, are you talking about? I'm not clear. Are you saying you're disappointed that Merrick Garland and Biden acted really slowly in pursuing these cases?
Well, they didn't. They acted slowly in pursuing cases against Donald Trump.
They didn't even act at all.
Well, you're talking about
Marjorie,
Trump.
They didn't even act
They
at
did
all.
actually, the Department of Justice, with all due respect to him, I think did an extraordinarily good job going after these rioters, these insurrectionists. If you mean that
I
Merrick...
agree.
Okay, so what you're saying, with which I also agree, Merrick Garland, if he had gone after Trump expeditiously, we wouldn't be discussing President-elect Trump pardoning these people come January 20th.
So that's your disappointment.
Yeah, and I share that completely.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim, thanks very much for the
A lot of
for the
people are
call.
disappointed in Merrick Garland. He was much too judicious, no pun intended, in waiting so long to press charges in many of the cases against President
And
Trump.
by the way, with all due respect to Tim, he could be right. I read those articles too about Biden regretting that he wasn't running, looking back on his accomplishments. My recollection of the story, but again, he could be right. It wasn't Biden reflecting that he was disappointed in Garland, but a lot of Biden's people. And regardless of who it is, Garland is done, in my opinion, with the exception of these prosecutions of the insurrectionists, a pretty abysmal job. 877-301-8970. But again, you saw it with your own eyes, and you saw it with your own eyes. Nick in Long Island, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Hey there. Nick. Put Nick on hold. We'll get back to you in a minute. 877-301-8970 is
Here's
the number.
Jason from Plymouth. History is written by the victors. As much as I hate it, it's an unfortunate truth. We just can't let this be their victory lap. Keep the fight and the truth alive. Here's another texter who says, I'm nauseous today. I can't believe he calls Trump a monster, was voted back into office. The only thing that is helping me today is seeing Michael J. Fox receive the Medal of Freedom from President Biden. Yeah, Michael J. Fox, who's been a great spokesperson for Parkinson's disease, which he contracted at a very early age. And he's been a great crusader for that cause. We're going to try Nick again. Hi, Nick.
Hello, Nick.
Hello. Can you hear me?
We can,
Yes.
yeah, shoot.
Yes, hi. I agree with your previous caller. Biden should never have run. It was the most selfish thing he did in the history of American politics to seek re-election at his advanced age. And shame on Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer for not forcing him to drop out, which they could have done. They could have worked harder to get him out. And Kamala Harris ran a gutless, incompetent campaign.
Nick, can I tell you something? Nick, can I tell you something? You're entitled to your opinion, and I actually share some of it. I don't think I share it to the extreme you do. The fact that this is your message on January 6th, when a felonious president is talking about, a committed felon is talking about pardoning some, if not most, of these people who attempted to overthrow the government of the United States, I would suggest your priorities are a little out of whack, Nick. So thanks for the call. Re-examine them. Call us back at some point, but not today. 877-301-8970. I think it's incredible that Biden thought about running for re-election, too, as we read in recently. But really? I mean, he's not the one who's going to pardon these people who did the damage they did. And again, this is not just a riot. This was an attempt to overthrow the government of the United States of America, and it was inspired by the guy who the American people just reelected to the presidency, and as a thank you for their day of love, intends to pardon. We don't know how many, but some, many, not all, allegedly, of these insurrectionists. I mean, my God. Terry and Hingham, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a little to add. A lot of things have been said that I agree with, some that I don't. But I just wanted to add that one person who died that day that is very rarely talked about is a woman named Roseanne Boylan.
Yeah, a 30-something Trump supporter. I remember very well.
Trampled.
Yep.
Right, she was a supporter. She
Yep.
was trampled to death that day. And that was not too peaceful, I don't think, when you trample people to death. So I just wanted to add that. And thank you for your discussion.
Terry, I'm really glad you added that point. I wonder what Donald Trump says about that. She was crushed. She was a Trump supporter, I think from Georgia, some southern state. She was 30-something. That's really interesting. Well, the facts are, just, we played the sound a minute ago. Let me repeat some of what we played from this Day of Love speech on Univision, the town hall in October. Ashley Babbitt was Trump speaking, was killed. Nobody was killed. Okay. there was the others had guns, but we didn't have guns. I mean, it's even internally in a statement, there's grotesque inconsistency, and but nevertheless, it was a day of love. Bernadette, was it a day of love in the truck? Hi.
No, it was the most disgusting day, actually, of my life. I watched the whole thing in horror. But all I want to say, while I'm glad you kind of beat up on that guy, Nick, because he is the epitome of dumb in America.
What?
Sorry that it's true.
Yeah.
And the texter who said we have to keep the truth going is absolutely right. The thing for me that I just can't help but wonder, Trump has to know at some level that the violence he's creating and encouraging and loving is going to come back at him, and it's going to actually hit him at some point. And it's just going to get worse before it gets better. But, I'm ready for it.
Well, except he doesn't believe that. I don't think he does. Remember the day of his speech right before the rioting when he was saying to the Secret Service people, let them in, even though they have weapons, because he knew their intention was not to use the weapons on him. So at least so far, his gamble, Bernadette, has been a winning gamble, don't you think?
I think so far, but I think he's a ticking time bomb, and you die the way you live. So I'm not threatening anything by any means. I'm just saying it's kind of inevitable that his violence will come back at him.
Hey, Bernadette, we appreciate your call. Thank you very much.
Several people, including Pete in New Hampshire, said we should both go to YouTube to see the literal videos of police removing barricades, opening doors, and escorting people in. I saw mostly barricades getting knocked over, and we did see the police officer that backed up the stairs as the rioters were coming in and tried to get people not to go so close to where the politicians were in the House and the Senate. But Pete in New Hampshire and the other people, I'd say, so what does that mean? Even if those videos show removing barriers, opening doors, and escorting people in, it might have been because...
Why are you saying this is not true?
Because, well, even if it were true, the fact that they may have felt overwhelmed and let someone go by, does that mean that this didn't happen? These attacks on the cops didn't happen? I mean, that's as you read from this police officer talking about how he was bloodied. He's had 2 operations. He can't. He was covered in blood that day. I mean, I guess. So what, Pete? I guess is what I'm saying.
4 of them took their lives by suicide. Brian Sicknick died, a day later, a few days later?
Yeah.
That's 5
and by the
law
way,
enforcement people.
One of the other big lies is Nancy Pelosi refusing to have the 10,000, sometimes it's National Guards people, or military people down there. And, according to the accurate reporting about this, people in the military, the leaders in the military, did not want military there that day attacking American citizens, and they were afraid of what would happen. So it was not Nancy Pelosi, and as the foreign president always says.
Before we take a break, what's the message? So he pardons some people involved in this. Let's hope if he does.
If there were
for the most minor offenses.
As many people who've said, that they're not in favor of what happened on January 6th. If there were some wrong convictions, if there were some mistakes with the jury, if there were some people that were badly represented.
You know what you do? You appeal your conviction.
Exactly.
No, well, not exactly. A pardon is not an appeal. Appeal your conviction. If you're wrongly convicted, appeal it.
Okay, but I would not have a problem with someone that was shown to have been somehow wrongly convicted. There was some.
Can you name any of them, by the way?
I cannot, but if there were, that's what I'm saying about it. But I certainly don't want people that are jailed legitimately for attacking police officers. And that's what's so weird. Someone texted a little while ago that they think a lot of rank and file police officers don't think of the Capitol Police as anything but a bunch of hacks, which is odd. There were also Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police on the scene as well who were severely injured. That other guy that we've seen with the tattoos all over his neck.
He's fab. I can't think of his name. He is really an impressive character.
Anyway, we're talking about how you feel about January 6th, almost 4 years later, and whether you are in favor of pardons by President-elect Trump for what happened that day. The number is 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
A large portion of Scotland's carbon footprint comes from one commodity, whiskey.
We have distilleries on remote islands, we have distilleries in highland locations, and we have distilleries in the main centre of population, where Glasgow and Edinburgh. There are different challenges that come with each of those.
Challenges including how to make the industry greener. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Acera School, where gifted kids can learn without limits through passion-fueled STEAM projects and above grade-level curriculum. Applications are due January 15th. aceraschool.org. And Mass Health Connector, dedicated to expanding health insurance access to uninsured and low-income residents with Connector Care. More at mahealthconnector.org or 1-877-MA-ENROLL.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, by the way, one of our colleagues. Thank you. Whoever did this mentioned that Michael Fanone is the name of that cop we mentioned a couple of minutes ago. We're live in our GBH studios in Brighton. This is day one of our official YouTube stream from here. As Marjorie said earlier, there are a couple of segments, the one with the Revs today and the one with Eric Daggins, that will not be streaming, but very soon 100% of, and the rest of the show is, 100% of what you listen to in Brighton will be streaming. We're back at the library tomorrow, which is always streaming, with the governor joining us from 11 to noon. And you can call or ask her a question face-to-face if you show up. Our text prompt of the day, I forgot about this, is 877-301-8970. Since it is our first day streaming in Brighton, I want you to weigh in on the stream. How do we look? Be kind. Are you excited to finally see the inner workings of Studio 3? Who's actually responsible for the wall of coffee stains? And Marjorie's most important question we'd like you to answer, which side is her best side? Text us, and we'll read you the best text a little before 1 o'clock. Right now, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about January 6th. Donald Trump calls it a day of love. Most people I know call it a day of betrayal. It's a 4-year anniversary today. And what do you think about the fact that the president-elect says he intends to pardon many, we don't know how many of the insurrectionists from January 6th on the day he is sworn in, day one. 877-301-8970.
Listen to this. I was just excused from grand jury duty this morning in Worcester because I invoked January 6th and the fact I didn't think I could be a fair and impartial juror as our country is ready to swear in a convicted felon and potentially pardon many of the criminals. That's from Cheryl in Sterling. And here's another texter who says, this is Denise in Dennis, Mass. I attended an event which Representative Richard Neal described the terror of that day, the heroism of the Capitol Police. One cop told him and others to barricade themselves inside their office, and in chilling detail recounted when they were given a pad of paper and told to list next of kin and any personal identification that may be needed. And meanwhile, on the other side, I'm getting all these texts about all the videos showing police casually letting people in. And again, I haven't seen all these videos, but if it's true, so what?
Well, I don't know that it's true, and I would suggest we not keep repeating something that's not true. If they want to send us a video, we'll be happy to look at it. 877-301-8970.
But what does it mean? That means the cops wanted to get beat up,
or
that they were doing that
who cares what it means? It's BS. These people, this was a violent attempt to overthrow the damn government of the United States. This is a misdirection scam by these people who are in denial or who are just trolling us.
A lot of people seem to believe this stuff.
Well, I don't give a damn if the facts are not there. And by the way, Trump won the election, which is why virtually no court, other than that one minor decision, 60 out of 60 ruled that there was no claim that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. Those people, I assume, will text us in a minute and say Donald Trump won the election, except for one thing. He didn't. Bethany in Attleboro, you're next.
I just want to point out that an awful lot of our texters are misinformed.
Bethany in Attleboro, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Hey.
Hi, don't yell at me.
Sorry, Bethany, go ahead.
I completely agree. First of all, this day is so sad, and it was disgusting and horrifying and the scariest day of my life. I just wanted to call when Marjorie was talking about the people, talking about police were moving things. I worked at Great Woods as a teenager at concerts, and I just wanted to mention crowd control. And you are taught with crowd control, if people are going to be trampled like that poor woman was, if people are going to endanger themselves or others, and if you're going to become trampled, you're supposed to move. You're supposed to do exactly what the police did. I only saw one where he moved it, but that's what you're supposed to do. Were they supposed to allow everyone to become trampled?
Including themselves.
Including themselves,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, those police officers were so brave, and they were so brilliant, and they held their ground for as long as they could. There was a coup. Everyone wants to pretend that there wasn't. If you were at home with your children, I felt like I was watching the end of our government. But my argument to anyone who says they moved the barriers is no, they kept people alive. They kept people from being trampled. They tried to stay alive themselves. That's their job.
You know, Bethany, also, we should have used, it was an attempted coup. I mean, that's essential. That is exactly what it was, and you called it what it was, and thank you for sharing your experience with us, Bethany from Attleboro. We appreciate
thank you to more of the texters in our staff. Michael Fanone was the
I said
DC
that,
cop, that was tattooed, has been on television talking about. And you saw him getting beaten, dragged down the stairs. He thought he was going to die. He didn't think he was going to get home that day. Elaine in Jamestown, thank you for calling.
Hey, Elaine.
Yeah, hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hi.
Yeah, I agree with Bethany that it was definitely a coup, and how it's not portrayed that way all these past 4 years is beyond me. But one thing I wanted to mention, during these past 4 years, every time Trump tried to reinvent the narrative, no reporter stood up to him and said, "You're wrong. You are the one who instigated this. You tried to overturn the government. You tried to pull off a coup." For instance, poor Christy Welker, I love her. She's great on that Sunday morning show. She interviewed him just 2 weeks ago, and he sat across from her and said, Liz Cheney should be thrown into jail, court-martialed, punished. And why didn't Christy Welker say to him right to his face, "This is something you did"? She stood up for the law. She's a hero, for goodness sake.
Can I tell you something, Elaine? I didn't see that interview, and there are a lot of reporters who have stood up to Trump. But interviewing Trump, I have to say, we had him on the air when he was running in the primary, but that was a whole different experience. Other than, what's his name, Jonathan Swan, that incredible interview, I don't think I've ever seen an interview where a reporter's been able to stand toe-to-toe with this guy for the whole length of the interview. When you lie nonstop, it is really, really hard.
That's why I think that we have to reach the point where we have to fact check. If you can't do it in real time, do it at the end of the interview or something, because most of these things are taped in advance. You could do it that way. And I think it really matters, because I do think people get away with these lies, and it's really hard at the moment to correct them. And some people don't know enough to correct them. But I think we got to start fact checking.
Elaine, thank you very much for the call. We are actually out of time.
We are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking of reporters, we're about to be joined by one.
We are about to be joined by one who's going to talk to us about the really terrible problems, the once mighty and very important Washington Post. We all remember Watergate and the role Washington Post played in that. And we're also going to talk about a couple of administrations, both the Baker administration and the Healy administration, allegedly turning a blind eye toward the problems facing Stewart Healthcare. Brian McGrory, who used to run the Boston Globe and now is BU's chair of journalism, is going to join us next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, artists and the Arctic.
An exhibition at New Bedford Art Museum offers a range of perspectives, from 19th century explorers to indigenous people of the Arctic region to 21st century contemporary artists who see one of the world's coldest regions literally melting away. That and more on the Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit comcastbusiness.com. And McLean Middleton. For over 100 years, McLean Middleton has been dedicated to serving its clients and its community, offering guidance through the complexities of today's legal system. With locations in Woburn and Boston. McLean.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live in Studio 3 in Brighton. It's day one of our official YouTube stream from here. Unless I, again, drop a Tupperware full of gazpacho on the equipment, which I did do. We're back at the library tomorrow with the governor. She is with us from 11 to noon for Ask the Governor. Our text prompt of the day is about our first day of streaming from the studio. How do we look? Be kind. You excited to finally see the inner workings of the show? Vote on who you think is actually responsible for the wall of coffee stains. Text us, and we'll read the best text a little before the 1 o'clock news. Joined now on Zoom by Brian Rigori. Brian is chair of Boston University's Journalism Department, former editor of the Boston Globe. Brian, Happy New Year. Good to see you.
Happy New Year, Jim. Hey there, Marjorie. How are you?
Hey, very well, Brian. Thank you very much for joining us. So we're reading very bad things about the Washington Post, once a powerhouse in journalism in the country, still a powerhouse, but slipping fast. What's going on down there, Brian?
Well, this is an important question. Before we do that, Marjorie, can we just go back to something Jim said? Jim,
Yes.
for your own branding, rather than say you drop gazpacho, why don't you just say soup, or even better, stew?
That's right.
Well, I'm sort of an internationalist, I guess, is my approach to this,
Gazpacho.
Brian, and you're like a hometown boy, so I understand that. But thank you for the advice. I'll take it to heart.
Remember
Thank you.
Dukakis going back an arugula salad? Jim has arugula salads all the time, you know.
No, by the way, for those who don't know that story, he's running for president. He's in Iowa, and he talks about, what is it called, crop switching? And he suggested they switch whatever they're planning,
Going
whatever.
to arugula.
In any case, okay, Brian, hi.
Hi, good to see you.
too.
So, Marjorie, you were asking about the Washington
Post, yes.
It's really troubling to see the hard times that a great American news organization has fallen on. And this isn't any really great American news organization. This is one of the 2 or 3 most important news organizations in the country, if not the world. And to see it facing the obstacles that it's often created for itself right now and having a hard time overcoming them, getting through them, is really dispiriting, especially when you're seeing the success at other significant news organizations like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. So it's not good. It's not good.
So we should say the most recent episode, which happened over the weekend, is one when Ann Telnis, I believe is how you pronounce her name, who's a Pulitzer Prize-winning cartoonist, does a cartoon about some of the executives, the Bezos most importantly, because obviously he owns the Washington Post in addition to Amazon, Mickey Mouse, Disney, and we know the $16 million they're paying Trump in court fees, Zuckerberg, and I think the guy who owns the Los Angeles Times, who killed the editorial in support of Kamala Harris, essentially bowing down to Donald Trump. The editorial page editor killed the cartoon, and she quit. Which comes on the heels of the editorial endorsing Kamala Harris being killed not too long ago, which comes on the heels of a couple of key political reporters leaving for The Atlantic. Josh Dawsey, who I think is as good a political reporter as any in America, is reportedly leaving the Washington Post for the Wall Street Journal. So, I mean, it's
we can show the cartoon on the stream, too.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
We'll pop it up.
We'll pop it up, the cartoon that she...
In a second. So this is not just a one and done with the cartoonist. This is like a nonstop exodus and censorship,
and by the way,
right?
We should point out that the Wall Street Journal is owned by Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox News and is generally in line with Trump. But apparently, Josh Dawsey feels more comfortable going to a Rupert Murdoch-owned newspaper than a Jeff Bezos-owned newspaper, which is not insignificant.
So let's just talk about the cartoon issue for a minute. And that is probably the least important issue they have right now, if you want to really break them down. But the cartoon issue just shows this unbelievably amateurish approach to public relations there, a lack of understanding, tin ear, whatever you want to call it. If you're the editorial page editor there, or you're the CEO, and you're weighing whether to run this cartoon or not, what you have to ask yourself is, would I be better off having this cartoon featured on the homepage of the New York Times with a story talking about how we killed it? Or would I be better off just putting it on the Washington Post and having, however number of people actually look at it during a holiday week when readership is low and when, quite bluntly, it wasn't even an original cartoon. It was just one more in the same stream of stories and whatever about the issues of billionaire tech executives kowtowing to Trump. So you put the cartoon in, nobody notices, nobody's paying attention to it, and you move on. Instead, they have a multi-day story, big headlines, homepage of the New York Times, and suddenly we're all talking about it here. It's just incredibly amateurish is what it is.
And we should point out, we have a clip from the Boston Globe's Jim Dow talking about the Henrys, of course, who own the Globe, saying they've not been involved in editorial decisions, followed by former Globe editor and former Washington Post editor Marty Barron saying he's worried about the public's perception of the news side of the Post. After this, you mentioned, Brian, the endorsement of Harris. Here it is.
Killing the endorsement of Harris.
Yes.
No. Flat out no. Yes, we send every editorial we write to John and Linda. They have a right to see what position their editorial board is going to take. They have never, knock on wood, killed one.
Well, I worry about the damage it does to the brand and the reputation of the Post, and that people might have greater suspicions today.
I'm going to follow up on what Marty Barron said to us, Brian. Why do we assume if there is this, to use the term you used in your column about what happened, I think, about Bezos and the Harris editorial anticipatory obedience, why do we assume that news editors at that same paper aren't going to engage in the same behavior that the editorial page is engaging in?
It's a fair question. It's a fair question, and it gets worse if it's on the news side, because as Jim Dow rightly pointed out, if you're the owner or the CEO, you do have a right to weigh in on editorials. It's probably not, well, not probably, it's definitely not good to weigh in the way that Bezos weighed in on the eve of an election with something as controversial as he did. But if you're in the news side, you don't want to hear from the owners on editorial judgments and what's news and what isn't. And, I can tell you, I'll just back up what Jim Dow said. The Henrys didn't weigh in on this kind of stuff at all. They left the news editorial judgments to the leadership of the newsroom. And, that included
Which would be you.
Which was, at the time, me for a while. And that included some tough columns and stories about entities that they own, specifically the Boston Red Sox. And so they stayed clear. It was really, really noble of them to do that. And we're not seeing that in Washington right now, but it's a good question about whether this will seep into editorial judgments in the actual newsroom.
I want to stay on this for a second. You're a brand new reporter. You're not Brian, before he was editor of the paper, was a celebrated and actually quite wonderful columnist, reporter. Before that, you're a young kid just hired at the newspaper, and you see what's going on above and around you. And even if it's not conscious, it seems to me, even if your editor is not sending you a message, don't write that story or don't do that angle, the likelihood that there being some subliminal effect, it seems to me, is there. That's first. And secondly, the other thing that troubles me, if this was a one and done at the Washington Post, just one example, and I'm not minimizing the cartoon or the editorial or any of this stuff, okay, it's horrible, but it happens. Why aren't the colleagues of these people standing up en masse? Why aren't people walking off? This is really attacks the absolute integrity of the newspaper, and I'm sure they're unhappy, most of them. They're just going to work today doing their job. Is that the right, as opposed to at least 250,000 subscribers? and I'm one, by the way, and I think you are too, Marjorie, 250,000 subscribers who canceled their subscriptions after the cancellation of the censoring of the Harris endorsement. Why isn't there an uprising?
Well, let me push back on that one a little bit, Jim, because I think there is something of an uprising. They've lost just in the last couple of weeks 4, 5, 6 of their biggest names. They all walked out the door. You mentioned Josh Dawsey earlier. He's one of the best White House reporters in the country. He broke story after story in the first Trump administration. Ashley Parker, one of the most colorful political writers in the country. She left to go to the Atlantic. Michael Scherer. Tyler Pager went back to the New York Times. There are any number of very high-profile people at the Post who have options, who have left. And the word out of the Post newsroom is there will be more. If you do have options, you're likely exercising them now and getting out of there. And we live in a news environment where business is tough. Like traffic on the World Wide Web is generally down. There's an aversion to news right now. People are looking away more than at it. News organizations have to do everything they can to attract eyeballs and to sustain the business. And you don't sustain it by dutiful, obligatory journalism. You sustain it by really smart people writing really smart things. And often these people are stars. And right now, the Washington Post is losing many of its biggest stars.
One last thing about this. This may be unfair, so I won't apologize in light of all this thing. Did you read in the last 24 hours, there's about to be a documentary coming out on Melania Trump? And do you know what station, what service the Melania Trump thing is coming out on?
Yeah, it's Amazon Prime.
Who owns that?
Yeah, the owner of the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos. Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it's really so. Brian, I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but let me stay on it for a second since you run a journalism operation now. Someone who, with the last few years, has said you can't trust the mainstream media. They're all liars. There's all influence, even if they love the fact that the Harris editorial was killed, even if they love the fact that the Tellness cartoon was killed. They say this is proof that their thumb is on the scale. You can't trust anything they do, whether it's on the editorial page, and you really can't trust the news pages, even though we don't have evidence they're interfering. We do have evidence, as Brian McGorry just said on the radio, that some of their best reporters are leaving. That must say something. What do you say to that person who says, you really can't trust these people anymore?
I mean, look, I honestly don't know what I'd say to that person, except for the Washington Post has a newsroom of 950 people, although there are reports that layoffs are going to be starting there this week, and they're going to be not insignificant. In that newsroom of 950 people, there are hundreds and hundreds of very, very accomplished journalists with strong North Stars who know how to do this business, who know how to do it well. They want to feel like their editor there or their editors have their backs as they go out and cover the news. And so I would, I would just say that the Post in particular is going through a very tough time. They will rebound. They will rebound. They just need a proper strategy to do this, and they will rebound. But it's going to take some concerted work. And look, the country is going to be better to have a stronger Washington Post holding people accountable in Washington.
Why do you think it's going to rebound with Jeff Bezos owning it?
It's a good question, because even as I was, look, in my view, it has to. We need the Washington Post in this media environment. You need the Post. The Times is a truly great world-class paper. Times has been way ahead of the Post in innovation in the last 10 or so years. But to properly cover the federal government, especially now at this incredibly sensitive time, you need a good Washington Post. Maybe I'm just willing and wishing it to a better place.
No, the reason I agree with you is this is America. We're not going to elect, for example, a guy who attempted to overthrow the government. So, I mean, that's never going to happen. We're talking to Brian McGorry, head of the journalism department at Boston University. So, Brian, I think you started this whole Stewart thing with these incredible columns about yachts and airplanes and all this sort of stuff, which grabbed the attention, I don't think just of locals, but I think all around the country. And then the dam broke, Globe's done spotlight stuff, that sort of thing, talking about how administrations turned a blind eye to what they knew the misbehavior or the non-compliance in reporting was.
The Baker and Healy.
Baker and Healy, I'm sorry, I should have said that. And Maura Healy, who will be with us tomorrow, has been quoted saying things like, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is the gist of it, that this is a fount of misinformation, totally unfair, didn't happen. What's your take on both the reporting and the governor's response?
So it's really interesting. Is this the first time she's been on your show since the Spotlight Report?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, that'll be good. Look, she has said, as you say, she has described it as, quote, a lot of insinuation. She has said it was a, quote, hit job. She had every possible opportunity to talk to the Globe Spotlight team before that story came out. They had been trying to reach her for weeks and weeks, since November. And she chose not to engage with the team at all, which I think tells you something big when the governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts doesn't want to talk about what she's done in terms of regulation of this massive healthcare enterprise that has gone bankrupt as Attorney General and then as governor. That speaks very loudly. Since that story has come out, she has acted angrily. She has used very strong words. What she hasn't done is ask for a correction. She hasn't pointed out anything specific that's been wrong. She hasn't pointed out anything specific that's been left out. I have a lot of admiration for the Globe Spotlight team and the work they've done on the lack of regulation of Steward Healthcare. And I'll be very, very intrigued by how she responds to your questions tomorrow.
Well, it seems as though there was some enchantment by regulators. I don't know what it was from, by Ralph De La Torre, that seemed to allow these things to keep happening. I don't know what that was about. Maybe you do.
Look, I don't know either. As the Spotlight story pointed out, there was a revolving door of regulators, and that revolving door went from Steward to Massachusetts state government. There was a lot of campaign contributions. There were rules that simply were not enforced when it came to Steward Healthcare. There were, presentations that were changed to benefit Steward Healthcare. There was a lot going on there. The governor might want to call it a lot of insinuation, but let's get specific on her part. What is it that she has to refute what the Globe has reported? Because the Globe has reported some really essential, important elements of this story.
They talk about this BU health professor, Alan Sager, calls it a charade of regulation, that a whole department was supposed to be regulating and really wasn't regulating at all, and nobody wanted to look too closely at why not.
Schrager's quote was brilliant. It was like they were going through the motions of regulation. And look, when Steward became a for-profit institution, that was before Healy was in state government. That was under Attorney General Martha Copley. Healy wasn't a part of it, but Healy was there for a lot of very sensitive moments in the life of Steward Healthcare, including, I'll say, January, February this year, when Steward was more public about its financial troubles, seeking bailouts, blaming low Medicaid reimbursement rates, and getting information from the state government in terms of what it was trying to do to soften the blow if any of these hospitals closed was like pulling teeth. She should have been out there holding news conferences constantly, letting us know what was going on behind closed doors, the steps that they were taking, and that includes Kate Walsh as well, the much revered Kate Walsh, who was an excellent president at Boston Medical Center. But look, as the Globe Spotlight team pointed out, there was some seeming funny business between phone calls that were made on behalf of a nurse at a Steward hospital, and Kate Walsh was very much involved in that.
Who the nurse's husband worked in the administration, by the way.
Yes, as a high-level healthcare executive in the administration.
Talking to Brian McGrory from not from the Boston Globe, formerly of the Boston Globe, now from BU School of Journalism.
We have a couple of minutes left, Brian. There was also this piece about influencers, that 20% of Americans are getting their news now from social media influencers on these different apps. And
NPR story, by the way.
Yes, it's an NPR story, exactly. And I've been trying to listen to some of these big influencers. And, lots of times regular reporters don't have the facts at their hands to fact check in real time a politician. But boy, if real reporters don't, these influencers are at least the ones I've listened to, including guys like Joe Rogan, the politicians get away with a lot with those people. So the trust seems misplaced in many cases to me.
Yeah, I think, Marjorie, I think we've always had influencers in news. They used to be not called influencers. They were called columnists and talk radio show hosts, and we're all part of that group. But what we had sort of regulating us, and I use that term somewhat loosely, was sort of a vast system. I mean, if you're a columnist at a major news organization, you have editors and you have expectations and all of that. If you're radio show hosts at a major news organization like you are, you also have producers and editors and all of that. So you can't go off just half-cocked saying things. Some of these influencers, a lot of these influencers don't have those same constraints. And I think we're seeing that playing out now. And, they have vast audiences to the point where Kamala Harris was criticized widely for not agreeing to go on Joe Rogan and foregoing the audience that she could have gotten by going on that. So I don't, I saw that NPR story mostly because you guys sent it to me, but I don't know what to make of it going forward. It's these people are not going to be going away, and the people who listen to them and rely on them as their main source of information are probably not anyone who GBH or the Boston Globe is going to reach.
I guess, you're right. They may not have a vast swath of people, but when you have as many listeners and as much influence and are making as much money as a Joe Rogan is, you could hire a few people, I think, that might be able to make
well, that
sure
assumes they care about the...
Yeah, but if you hire a few people and they start changing the program, you start losing your audience and you start losing your influence, and suddenly it's not going the way you wanted it to go.
I'd love to continue this conversation, but I just realized I have some soup heating up in the microwave. So I've got
soup.
By the way, it's incredible. Let's
stew.
talk next time you're on.
Eats beef
let's
stew,
talk
Brian.
about the restaurant list of Man of the People, Bryant McGrory. But look at the look on his face, by the way. Can you see this? We're streaming. We see you.
I can guarantee. Jim, it has been years, if ever, that I have had gazpacho, and I can tell you I have never brought gazpacho to work.
Thank you, Brian McGrory.
See you, Brian.
Brian
Take care.
McGrory,
Happy
the
New
chair
Year.
of Boston University's journalism department. He was a longtime editor and columnist at the Boston Globe. Coming up after the new news, we're going to talk to GB.
In Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Babson College, where you can advance your career with an MBA or specialized master's at the school ranked #2 best college in the United States by the Wall Street Journal. More at babson.edu/grad programs. An all-new roadshow season kicks off at the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art. It's part history lesson, part treasure hunt, and all fun. Don't miss Antiques Roadshow tonight at 8 on GBH2.
All around Jim's side. Text us your thoughts on the live stream. We'll read our favorites before 1 o'clock. It's all in the second hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
In Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. In 1 hour, Congress gathers for a joint session to finalize President-elect Donald Trump as the winner of the 2024 election. The constitutional process of certifying the vote takes place 4 years after many Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol to stop the count to certify then-President-elect Joe Biden.
Today will be an extraordinary day for American democracy, says Rick Pildes, an election law expert at NYU.
January 6th is the date, if there is one date, at which we witness the peaceful transfer of power.
As president of the Senate, Vice President Kamala Harris will oversee the electoral certification today for an election she lost. It is the first certification done under new guidelines passed in 2020.
Storm is disrupting school, work, and transportation.
Heavy snow and plunging temperatures are creating dangerous travel conditions from the Great Plains to the East Coast.
Thousands of flights were canceled or delayed, with the highest percentages at airports around Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, and Amtrak canceled dozens of trains on the Northeast Corridor. The storm also left a trail of destruction across the Midwest and the South. Hundreds of thousands of customers were without power from Missouri to Virginia. In Kansas, over 1,000 cars were stranded on the road after snowfall trapped them on the interstate. Kansas City International Airport saw a record 11 inches of snow on Sunday. Joel Rose, NPR News, Washington.
At the 2025 Golden Globe Awards last night, actor Demi Moore won her first ever award. She took home the trophy for Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy for her role in The Substance. The movie's about a 50-year-old actress who, after losing her job, takes a drug that's supposed to turn her into an enhanced version of herself. Accepting the award, Moore recalled the advice a woman once gave her, which she believes matches the message of the film.
Just know you will never be enough. But you can know the value of your worth if you just put down the measuring stick. And so today, I celebrate this as a marker of my wholeness and of the love that is driving me, and for the gift of doing something I love.
Audio of Demi Moore, courtesy of Golden Globes LLC and Dick Clark Productions LLC. The Dow is up 353 points, or more than 0.75%. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Patriots fans are reacting to the firing of head coach Sherrod Mayo yesterday after one season on the job. Many of the Pats faithful have been calling for Mayo's dismissal for months, given the team's dismal performance. Patriots win yesterday in the last game of the season angered fans even further, since it cost them the first pick in this year's NFL draft. Speaking on his podcast, sports personality and Massachusetts native Bill Simmons had harsh words for how the franchise handled the whole situation. We got it.
Me is they fire the coach right after the game. Basically, he's trying to win, and the offensive coordinator, they're trying to win because they don't know if they're going to be there. They're trying to coach for their jobs. Why not get rid of them before the game? Why not put this decision in the hands of people who care about the big long-term picture of the franchise?
Patriots owner Robert Kraft expected to address the situation 1 hour from now from Gillette. GBH's Esteban Bustillos will be on it. Last week, we learned that organizers of the Boston Calling Music Festival are making changes in response to some complaints from last year. And today, this year's lineup has just been announced. Over 50 acts will take the stages over the three-day weekend, headlining Friday, May 23rd, country superstar Luke Combs. Headlining Saturday, May 24th, Fall Out Boy. And closing the festival on Sunday, the 25th, the Dave Matthews Band. Other acts include Sheryl Crow, T-Pain, Avril Lavigne, Cage the Elephant, Vampire Weekend, Sublime, Public Enemy, TLC, Tom Morello, and James Bay. This is GBH News.
Okay, welcome back to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We have the text on the streaming, a lot of trash in here. People are upset about it, Jim. Anyway, it's Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan. We are live from Studio 3, and this is day 1 of our official stream here. We'll be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with the Ask the Governor. Maura Healy's going to be with us from 11 to 12. Yes. Hello, Jim.
You know, we're on the air. You know, this is like a live
Yeah.
show. Okay, fine. A couple of things. There are a couple of segments coming up in the next couple of hours you will not be able to see on streaming. It's just the day one thing that will be corrected going forward. And the text thing that Marjorie mentioned, and we'll read some of those texts a little before the 1 o'clock news. You text us at 877-301-8970. Since it is our first day of streaming from Brighton Studio 3, we want to know, how do we look? How do we individually look? One of us is very concerned about that. I won't say who that might be. What do you think of the studio? Do you have any opinion on where the coffee stains came from on the wall? Marjorie, as you know, is obsessed with that. Text us your thoughts on all those things at 877-301-8970. We'll read some of those right before the 1 o'clock news. Joined now on Zoom by Charlie Sennett, GBH News analyst, founder of the Ground Truth Project. You can follow his Ground Truth newsletter on Substack at Charles Sennett, SENNOTT, .substack.com. Charlie, it's great to see you.
Great to see you, Jim.
Yeah,
and Marjorie.
yeah,
Happy
we
New
get a-
Year.
we get
I
a
think
lot-
you guys look marvelous. I
Thank
just
you.
want to get
Thank
that
you.
right out.
That's all we need to
Well,
hear.
there's too much trash behind me. I'm going to have to clean it up during the next break.
Could you clean up behind me when you're
You
done,
notice I
too?
blurred my background.
That's what we should have
Trust me,
done.
I'm going with it.
Blurred the background.
Go ahead.
Okay. Charlie, a lot of stuff involving you we're going to get to in a couple of seconds. But first, Trudeau is apparently resigning up in Canada. What's going on?
Yeah, it's official. I mean, I was trying to think of all these threads today that we want to try to get to. If you were going to sort of put them in one large basket, it would be that, remember when we talked about how half of the world's population went to democratically held elections in 2024? Half the world. That biggest trend globally, like we are experiencing here in our country, is a movement away from liberalism and a movement toward populism or conservative movements. But it's really clear that the left of center movement across the world, is happening. And I really think we need to think of this pretty stunning news of Trudeau stepping down in advance of elections that he'll have to call, which polls are clearly showing he's going to lose. And I think that is this really super broad trend that we have going on. And that fits into a lot of different things, across the landscape, across the world. And it is, of course, extremely interesting when you have Trudeau doing this, that Elon Musk, who's become this unelected force in the world with his 250 million followers on X and a megaphone that's extraordinary, has also been calling for a lot of this. So Musk sees himself as part of that voice toward calling it on the collapse of the liberal vision of the world and pushing forward, a much more pointed and a much more conservative, although I use the word conservative with Musk with a small c, a much more conservative approach to the efficiencies of business, to the idea that regulation is tying up the world and that the liberal experiment is failing.
Well,
But
it's
where
interesting.
do-
I'm sorry,
I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say, but where does populism fit in there? Because I think the liberals might have done themselves some good to be a little bit more populist in a lot of what they emphasize. So what about that? Because that's part of it. And I wouldn't say, are the Republicans in this country or conservatives in other countries necessarily populist as well?
It's so hard to talk globally using the words liberal and conservative because they mean different things in different countries all the time. And I think populist is a phrase that does cut across a lot of international boundaries. I don't think I would agree with you, Marjorie, that the Democratic Party in our country, in the United States, at least in this last election, was hit enough of the populist notes. I don't know. I don't even know what I mean myself by populist, but I would tell you, I don't think they're
Income
listening.
inequality, can't afford your health care, can't afford your rent, can't afford your home,
Yeah,
can't
but
afford college.
they're saying the words, but they're not out there doing the
Yeah,
action.
yeah.
They aren't there on the ground. Look, I was in Michigan, I was in Austin on these elections. I certainly am no expert on the political landscape of America. That is not my strength, never has been. But through what we have with our Report for America program, it puts me in many corners of the world that are very distressed, including corners of America that are very distressed. And my time in Michigan revealed to me a Democratic Party that was not listening to working people in these failed industrial states. The failed industrial states, meaning they're not failed states. Michigan is a great state with amazing enterprise and a really a lot going on there. But it's certainly true that the industrial belt has failed. Those jobs have gone away. And you watched how dissatisfied people are and how frustrated they are compared to Austin, where it was interesting to go from one auto manufacturing center, Michigan, that is faded, rusted, and going away, to a new one in Austin that is automated, robotic, under Musk. This is the Tesla plant that I explained to you guys when I saw it. It's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. I don't want to be cheering on a lot of Musk's new entry into politics, but I do want to say his work, his expertise, his genius, I think we can say, in terms of creating an electric vehicle that is the most popular car in the world, is on fire in Austin. And that's a red state. It's a blue island in a red state in Austin. But I think there is a time for the liberal movement in America to step back and reflect Yes, it gives voice to that populism, Marjorie. You're absolutely right. But it
I
is
don't think
not.
I don't think it does. I said the opposite. I don't think liberals do it
Oh.
enough.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misheard
Okay.
you. Okay, then I agree.
Can I say
'Cause
one
I
more
would
thing
say-
about? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would just say, like, but the key I think we really agree on here is that they give voice to these things. They
Right.
say them, but they're not doing them. They're not really listening to working people in America. And if the Democratic Party is going to really reflect on how it failed, it needs to stop pointing fingers of blame here and there at each other. Start realizing that the key operative mode right now is to listen to America, listen to the economic pain that is out there, listen to people who feel frustrated. That is an expression that is loud and clear, as I say, not only here in America, but now around the world.
Well, you left out one element. Listen to the people, then lie to them about what you're going to do for them, as opposed to the
That
elite,
seems
which
to be
is
working. Yeah,
as
that's
anti-populist
really-
as it gets.
But Jim, that's where our jobs come in.
Exactly. Let me just add one thing. I want to make clear what part of what Charlie Sennett was saying. We all know what Musk's influence was here, the $250 million and all that sort of thing. He is getting involved to the extent that it is legal, or maybe more, in international politics. His success with Trump, I mean, whether it's the German election, and he wrote an op-ed there supporting a right-wing party.
Wants King Charles III to dissolve Parliament and order a new general election.
Exactly. So
yeah, those kinds of things.
The reach of Musk is great. Before we get into what I hope is some good news, but I assume it is not, coming out of Gaza, because last night there was a piece on CNN about the death of babies, some of which froze to death in tents because there was no place else for them to be. We're going to get to, I want to talk about a bright spot for a second. We just finished talking to somebody who ran a local newsroom for a bunch of years, Brian McGrory, when he was editor of the Globe. When I read about this grant that you guys have gotten for Report for America, I did a double take. It's huge, and look at the look on Charlie's face. One, congratulations. It is unbelievably important and great. Tell us what happened with you guys in the Knight Foundation, Charlie Sennett.
Yeah, so you see the smile on my face because we have an amazing team at Ground Truth and at Report for America who made this happen. Our new CEO, Rob Zeski, has been working really hard on this for a long time. And, it's a $20 million infusion of cash into our operation, which basically takes and recognizes that the crisis in local news in America is a crisis for our democracy. That I really, you've been hearing me rattle on about this for years now.
We agree.
But I think we're really seeing it more and more clearly. And, it is interesting that that crisis in local news is global, and we're seeing its impact globally. But to focus on the Knight grant, that's for Report for America, where we've had pretty close to 700 reporters who we have put into local newsrooms around the country. It's a really simple formula. I've explained it before, so I don't want to get too...
No, actually, you should. Give us a little bit of detail about who they are and what they do.
Sure. It's really becoming a movement. I'm so proud of this team. I started Ground Truth 12 years ago. Report for America started 7+ years ago, and it's on fire. It is just growing. It's surging. And what we do is we scour the newsroom. We look for newsrooms in areas that want to improve their coverage, so largely distressed areas of America, or places where a news organization is struggling and can't serve a part of its population. We select those newsrooms if they have good values, if they have good standards for editing, if they really believe in public service, and if they have a viable business model. That's harder and harder to find, right? Because they're all really struggling, but we're looking to support those who are doing a good job. And then we put out a call to reporters. We say, hey, if you want to work in any of these selected newsrooms, we are calling you to serve. And this is what it is. It is a service program. We're calling you to serve local communities by doing local news because they need you if they're going to have a functioning and working democracy in their communities. We know when there are news deserts, as they're called, where news organizations just fold up, we know the movement is toward less voter participation, increasing polarization, and communities see their bond ratings undercut. They go down because banks don't want to invest in communities where there is no local news. So we're trying to build a movement of awareness that local news is how you have a healthy community. We're lucky in Boston and in many parts of New England, not all of them, by the way, but in many parts of New England, we have a pretty vibrant news landscape, and we have a community that is, that has the benefit of the newsroom upstairs from you guys is amazing. The Boston Globe is amazing. There are so many great local news organizations in our community, but as you get more and more local, and as you drill down to those very, very local news organizations, they are struggling. They're disappearing. Report for America tries to address that need. Knight Foundation has really come in strong behind us and said that they really see our organization as a movement. And 12 years of doing all this, this is the biggest moment for us in terms of the funding we need to make this change happen.
You just said, Charlie, that banks don't want to invest in communities without local news. Why is that?
Well, think about it. Like if you have, let's say you're a bank and you want to donate, you want to actually issue a bond for, say, a $50 million for a new school. If you're Newton, Massachusetts, that's the price tag, or higher these days, right? But why would you ever want to invest in a school district if no one's watching the store on the money you're putting into it? So, we know this. Our job, our whole lives have been about going out and looking at how the money's being spent, calling people out, digging, really going for accountability journalism, as it's now called these days. It used to just be called reporting. But I think about the work that went into the series. I was really proud of the work we did on the Big Dig back in the day.
Yes,
which
it was great.
Podcast at GBH. But we were given so many resources, so that when there was all this money pumped in, I could go really dig and really, really look. And there was that moment where we challenged Bill Weld on his extraordinary push for this thing to get done. And we just said, you're going to be at $2 billion a mile on this project. This is going to be the most expensive piece of highway in the entire federal legislation. And he said that we weren't right. And in the end of the day, it was right. And we only got that by digging. And not enough news organizations are doing that. They don't have the resources, and the banks are noticing it. So it's not causal, it's correlative, right? It's correlative. It's interesting, though, that good journalism, in a very discernible, data-driven way, we can say, helps communities invest in themselves, because you need someone watching the store if you're going to have a healthy community.
I just want to give an example of my hometown of Fall River. Years ago, the Fall River Herald News was not ever a very good paper, unfortunately. But at the time, the Providence Journal, which was a great newspaper back in the day, investigated corruption in the building of a high school. You just mentioned high school is very expensive. This new Durfee High School was leaking from the day it opened, and the Providence Journal investigated, and one of the school committee members and a educator went to jail for their...
I remember those. My brother used to work at the Providence Journal.
Oh, great newspaper.
And I loved it back in the day. It's a shadow of itself, like so many news organizations. But my son, just to inject a little bit of hope, right next to Fall River in New Bedford.
In Bedford Light, yeah.
My son works for the New Bedford Light, or used to. He's actually having a little Kerouac moment going across the country right now.
Good for him.
But he has loved working with the New Bedford Light. And he is so in awe of the time they give him to dig in on the stories that he's writing. So I think there are new models. Remember, the New Bedford Light replaced the old, beautiful broadsheet newspaper there that has just fallen on hard times.
Standard Times, yeah.
Exactly.
But let me just say, I hate to throw a cloud over this.
Oh, here you go.
We have to.
Jim.
We have to replace Charlie with a Report for America person, because Charlie said a minute ago, if you're in Newton North and the high school costs $50 million, I just looked it up.
That's right.
It cost $200 million, and that was 14 years ago. So it costs about $8 billion.
Hey, sorry,
today.
I meant to say a new roof. I think the roof.
And your taxes taxes
Charlie,
keep going up and up
one
and up
last
and up
thing.
and up.
One last
But
thing.
really,
If people
Jim,
want,
just before we-
if people
before
want
we
to,
just
no,
end-
no, let me go.
Okay.
If people want to find out, particularly young people, want to be reporters or are reporters, want to participate in the program, how do they find out more about it?
Thanks. Go to reportforamerica.org,
Okay.
and the whole process is there.
Great.
All the questions on how you apply, what we try to do. But you will see in the roster of the new, we call them host newsrooms,
Yeah.
partnerships we have with more than 300 newsrooms now across America.
It's amazing.
Every state of the union is there, distressed places. I think of it like, it's almost like, this is like the Peace Corps
Yeah.
or Teach America for journalism. This is about, you have a chance to go see other parts of this country, or maybe serve your own community. We don't care. We're totally agnostic on that. But what we want people to do is understand local reporting is service. Service is needed. The truth matters. And you can actually go out and be part of that movement. Yeah, and it's reportforamerica.org. We're taking applications for reporters right now. Great. And it is, it's really exciting. We can't thank the Knight Foundation enough. And it's the team. I can't stress this enough. The team that's getting this done is a team that I may have been part of building as the founder of Ground Truth, but this team is on fire, all on their own, and they are off to the races.
You know, I hate to do this, but we're really short on time. I mentioned what appears potentially hopeful that Hamas is talking about a list of maybe 35 hostages could be released if there was a ceasefire. We literally only have about 90 seconds, Charlie. Is this false hope? Yet again, what's the reality?
I don't think it's false hope, but I think we have to be very realistic in understanding that we are close. We are close. This is a people, Palestinian people, who are exhausted, and just imagine what life is like there now. The Israeli people, I think, are also seeing a moment of opportunity to actually try to end this fighting, to try to bring those hostages home. There's a confluence of events, too short a time to go into it, but it feels a little bit like those days when Jimmy Carter had to see that it would be Reagan who would bring the hostages home. Yeah. And this time, I think it will be Trump who sees those hostages coming home. And it is interesting and worth noting, next show, let's talk about Iran and its influence back then and now, and how it is playing domestic politics in our country.
Charlie, once again, congratulations to you and your colleagues. It's really spectacular. It's
I'm
very
inspired,
exciting.
Charlie.
So much.
I think it's
Thanks.
wonderful.
And hey,
yeah,
I appreciate it. And just quick shout out, the newsletter on Substack next week. I really want to talk about our shift over to that if we have some time.
Absolutely,
all right?
we will.
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
Right.
Charlie,
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
We've been speaking with Charlie Sennett, GBH News analyst and founder of the Ground Truth Project. You can follow his Ground Truth newsletter on Substack at charlessennett.substack.com. Up next, Eric Deggans, NPR TV critic, is going to talk to us about last night's Golden Globes, the winners, the losers, some of the highlights, and he's also going to talk about some of his personal favorite TV shows of the year. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, although the next segment will not be streaming because it's our first day and we didn't get our act together, but after that, the rest of the show will be streaming.
Well, actually, it's not, nor are the Revs, but down
the Revs.
line,
That's
everything
right.
will be.
Okay, 2 segments will not be shown today
Marjorie's fault.
because we didn't get our act together. It's Jim's fault, actually, but we'll discuss it later. Thank you very much.
Be right back.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Kauffman Foundation, providing access to opportunities that help people achieve financial stability, upward mobility, and economic prosperity regardless of race, gender, or geography. Kauffman.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Lyric Stage, presenting Crumbs from the Table of Joy. Set in 1950s Brooklyn, 2 sisters mourn the loss of their mother with Hollywood films, daydreams, and lots of cookies. January 10th through February 2nd at Lyric Stage Boston. Tickets at lyricstage.com. And Brown University pre-college programs, where academically motivated high school students can experience college life, nurture their diverse interests, and make new friends. Applications for summer 2025 open January 15th. precollege.brown.edu.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She's Marjorie Egan. We're live from our GBH studios in Brighton, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library tomorrow. Governor Maura Healey will join us for an hour of Ask the Governor. That starts at 11. CNN's John King will zoom in as well. Last night, a comic Nikki Glazer took on hosting at the 82nd Golden Globe Awards. Here's just a little taste of her monologue.
Wicked, queer, night bitch. These are not just words Ben Affleck yells after he orgasms. These are some of the incredible movies nominated tonight. The Bear, The Penguin, Baby Reindeer. These are not just things found in RFK's freezer. These are TV shows nominated tonight.
Here with us over Zoom to talk about the TV shows that won big last night or did not, and his choice for best shows of 2024 is NPR TV critic Eric Deggans. Eric's also a contributor to NBC, MSNBC, and our show, and he's the author of Race Baiter, How the Media Wields Dangerous Words to Divide a Nation. Happy New Year. It's great to see you, Eric.
All right. Thanks so much for having me. It's so much fun.
Our
yeah,
pleasure.
well, Jim and I are not professional critics,
Oh, we're not?
obviously. No, we are not. But I must say...
I'm barely a professional critic. So
Okay, we're
you're in good company.
Okay, all right. So 2 non and 1 barely. But I got to say, I got a kick out of Nikki Glaser last night. I especially love when she did the thing about, made fun of their acceptance speeches. You know, when she counted the shout-outs to God, the shout-outs to Mom, the shout-outs to 9,000 people no one's ever heard of. What'd you think?
I thought she did a great job. And one of the things that's tough about hosting these shows is that you have to poke fun at the celebrities, but you have to do it in a way that they see it as good-natured, so that they take the jokes well, so that the audience also enjoys them, right? And I think that was the line that the previous host last year, Joe Coy, was not able to walk, and he came across as sort of mean-spirited, and also the audience in the room didn't seem to know who he was. Nikki Glaser has made enough of an impact. She was the highlight of Netflix's roast to Tom Brady, and she's been doing celebrity roast for a long time. She's had some successful stand-up specials, and she was nominated for a Golden Globe last night. So the audience was more likely to know who she was, and I think she went into it knowing, hey, I'm kind of an outsider. I'm not a film person, so all my jokes are going to be like, hey, I'm just this outsider in the middle of all of this. And one of the big questions, of course, was that her actual act can be kind of raunchy. Could she do something for network television? And I think she did also handle that really masterfully. Now, there's been some journalism on how she prepped, and she had something like 10 writers, so she had a lot of help. But still, I thought she did a really great job.
The reason I'm laughing, Eric, is when you said kind of raunchy, if people didn't see the Brady roast, her line, which we cannot repeat here, to Brady that melted him under the table was one of the great roast lines ever.
Well, she got really close with some of her jokes at the Golden Globes, but she knows how to walk that line.
I agree with that.
And I think, this, I mean, as much as it was important for films, I mean, we saw Amelia Perez win a lot of awards, which sort of is raising that film's consciousness, I think, in a lot of people's minds. And voting for the nominations at the Oscars is going to get underway very soon, so that's important. And The Brutalist also did really well. And that's a 3.5-hour film. That a lot of people thought couldn't even be made or couldn't be distributed. So to see those 2 films win big is important. But it was also a little bit of a coming out for Nikki Glaser.
Yeah.
And for her to show that she could play in the big leagues of major show business. And, I can't wait to see what she does next with the momentum she's going to get from hosting the show.
Well, tell people a little bit about the 2 big winners. I mean, you mentioned The Brutalist being 3.5 hours long, but what else? And about Amelia Perez, too, that may not know.
Well, again, I'm not a film critic, so I haven't even seen Amelia Perez yet. I have seen The Brutalist. That's why I knew how long it was. But these basically we're at this point in the award show process. The Golden Globes, one of their advantages is that they were the first major awards show in film that starts this cascade of film awards that will include the Directors Guild Awards, it will include the Screen Actors Guild Awards, and it will ultimately include the Oscars. And in fact, voting for the Oscars is going to get underway soon. So all the publicity that comes from the wins that we saw, Zoe Saldana had this very emotional acceptance speech. She's part of the cast of Amelia Perez. And, we saw Adrian Brody's, emotional acceptance speech for The Brutalist. It just raises those films in people's consciousness, and maybe when they go to vote, they're thinking, "Wow, I like The Brutalist, but man, it just won a Golden Globe." So that, of course, that's the hope that everyone has, and that's why I think you saw so many stars actually show up for the Golden Globes. The Globes had to sort of rescue its reputation. Just a few years ago, it was facing a lot of criticism. Because the members of it was done by a group called the Hollywood Foreign Press, which doesn't exist anymore. Hollywood Foreign Press Association. They didn't have it was a very small group. They were criticized for taking advantage of the perks and the access that came from being Golden Globes voters. They didn't have any black members. And so, there was a lot of reforms sort of forced. They added a lot of voters. Now, I think one of the things we saw is that the results have become a bit more conventional, especially in television. But I also think it helped the awards sort of rescue its reputation. And we saw, it was star-studded. There was only, I think, one winner who didn't show up, Jeremy Allen White from The Bear.
One last thing about this. I wanted to touch on what you just touched on. I'm a huge believer in second chances, and I think Marjorie is too. But having said that, the history of corruption in this organization, the racism, when you look at something like the International Olympic Committee or FIFA, you say, well, it'd be a hell of a difficult task to replace them and their corruption and that sort of thing. There are a million film and TV award shows. So did the Golden Globes deserve a second life, Eric Deggans?
Well, I think a lot of critics would say not necessarily. But, it is an awards ceremony that's been around a long time. And I do think that if it's done right, it does have a role. Because most of the voters still are from international sources, we see films that are not centered on Hollywood and not centered on America that get a little more attention, and stars from outside of America that get a little more attention. And, in the TV world, what was interesting is that they would often find, because of the way the nominations work for the Emmys and for the Golden Globes, they would have a shot at nominating shows that were interesting and creative, TV shows that were interesting and creative and good before the Emmys could.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what happened this year is they don't see. I don't. It's dangerous to assume too much, but it seems like the voters for the current body know film a lot better than they know TV. So they wound up giving awards to shows that had already cleaned up at the Emmys just a few months ago. So we saw Shogun win, we saw Baby Reindeer on Netflix win, and we saw Hacks on HBO win. And typically with the Globes, at least in TV, like John Hamm won a Golden Globe before he won an Emmy for Mad Men. They were a little bit ahead of the Emmy curve, and I would like to see them get back to that. But there is, I think, a role that the Golden Globes could play if it's effectively administered. But all of these award shows, there is so much, there's so much commerce centered on them. They give away these gift bags. Supposedly the gift bags for the Golden Globes are worth nearly $1 million. And so no wonder all the stars show up, right? There's
free drinks too, open bar.
There's all this commerce that surrounds it, and the company that owns the Golden Globes now also owns a lot of the trade press in Hollywood. The Hollywood Reporter, for example. So it's always going to be an enterprise that is sort of fraught with a lot of commerce and ideals that don't necessarily match up with what the award is supposed to stand for. But I think the Golden Globes can stand for something, and one of the things we have to do as critics is just take a look at how they're operating now and see if they've actually reformed it, and see if it winds up broadening the conversation about which films and TV shows should get awards, which ultimately is where it could really be valuable.
Eric Deggans, did I hear you right that each gift bag is $1 million?
I don't know. Someone else in the industry sort of told me that, and I think there might be a story out there about that. What I would say is,
they're worth a lot.
I haven't reported that, but they are worth.
I can interrupt
you.
Today.com, as in Today's Show. What's inside the 2025 Golden Globe swag bags valued at $1 million?
God,
so
apparently,
wow.
So I knew there was reporting out there.
If
saying
you got to go, you could sell your gift bag and then you could retire. Wow.
Well, and again, that's sort of the paradox of show business at this level, is that people who don't even need that level of largesse are the ones who get it. So these people, they probably could put together a gift bag for a friend that would be worth $1 million if they wanted to.
That's right.
But that's, it's important for people to know that that's one reason why these people show up for this thing.
I'm sorry we're getting diverted by this. However,
what?
All 100 participants who receive the bag will be treated, this is according to today.com, a 5-day yacht charter through the Coral Triangle in Indonesia.
Oh, my God.
$60,000. A 5-night stay at the Ritz-Carlton Grand Cayman. $55,000 on and on and on. We're talking to Eric Deggans.
Okay.
Eric, let's go to your
Yes.
4. And if we can, on your list is Shogun, and I'm not minimizing it at all. But one last
It's the top of my list.
I know it's at the top of your list. Can we skip though? If we have time, we'll get back to it. To 2 shows that I hadn't even heard about until you. Fight Night I watched this weekend because of you. It is unbelievably
This is such a good
fabulous.
show. And that's a show that I think just kind of went under the radar.
Oh.
Even though, Sam Jackson's in it, Terrence Howard's in it,
Cheadle.
Don Cheadle's in it, Kevin Hart's in it, Taraji P. Henson's in it. It's got an amazing cast. It has this sort of a vibrant blaxploitation flavor.
It's great.
It's basically a limited series about this, amazing true life thing that actually happened, where Muhammad Ali, his first fight after he went back to fighting after objecting to the Vietnam War, was in Atlanta, and so a bunch of the biggest black criminals in the world came to Atlanta to party and watch this fight. And Kevin Hart plays this guy who tries to set up a party for them. He wants to make his name with these guys, and he says, oh man, I can put on a really great show for them. I can put on a really great party. Well, other people find out about it, and they decide to rip off that party, not knowing that the people attending the party would be these incredibly dangerous gangsters.
That's great.
And of course, Sam Jackson plays the most dangerous one. And so we get a speech from him that's almost that feels like that speech that he gave in Pulp Fiction. You know what I mean? Nobody talks smack like Sam Jackson. And Don Cheadle plays a police officer in Atlanta who had to face down racism and had to deal with white cops who didn't trust him. He also had to deal with black people who didn't trust him because he was a police officer. But he teams up with Kevin Hart to try and figure out who actually robbed these guys, because Kevin Hart wants people to know he had nothing to do with it. So it is really, really entertaining, and it's told, like I said, with this vibe of blaxploitation, because it happened in the 70s. And so you get this really nostalgic vibe going on, even though it's a limited series about something that actually happened and involved real people that folks haven't really heard about.
Speaking of nostalgia, I want you to know I watched on closed circuit, which doesn't even exist, I don't think anymore, Muhammad Ali versus Jerry Quarry, which was the fight in Atlanta in 1970. Here's a little sound. And by the way, when you hear the reference to Chicken Man, Kevin Hart is Chicken Man. Here's a little sound.
All I ask is that you provide a legitimate living for this family.
This one here is the one that can put me on top, and I feel it for us. I'm thinking Black Vegas, gambling, liquor, women.
You still need to reach out to the council of all the top black bosses across the nation. Who the is this?
Chicken Man.
Chicken Man.
Chicken wing?
You don't speak chicken?
I'll tell you, I loved this thing. I just love this show. Thanks to Eric Deggans, I should say. We're talking to Eric Deggans.
What was great about the show too is that it was about the emergence of Atlanta as sort of a center for black life. And Chicken Man, the character that Kevin Hart plays, he had this vision that Atlanta would become this place where black folks came and saw as sort of a black mecca, and he wanted to try and make it happen by hosting this party. So it's also a little bit about how it's the origin story of Atlanta as much as it is the story of this heist that nobody knew about.
Well, another one of your top productions was Photographer. We got a little sound from that too. This is a trailer of National Geographic series, as I just said, Photographer.
When I'm shooting, I'm in my element. Beautiful, here we go. There's a masterpiece everywhere. It's not just a razzle-dazzle adventure. It's life.
All right, this is it.
Let's go. These moments that you immortalize makes a lot of difference.
Okay, you ready?
We're in go mode. This is the adventure of a lifetime.
Just imagine how much more is out there.
Why'd you like it?
Well, if you've worked in media for any amount of time, you know that photographers are actually the most interesting people you will ever meet.
So true.
But they're also the kind of people who like to let their images speak for themselves, so you often don't hear their stories. So this was a really compelling National Geographic docuseries taking a look at how these amazing photographers created their work. And their live stories are, really dramatic. I mean, they focused on one couple where the guy grew up with Inuit with the Inuits, and then decided to become a photographer. And the woman faced, a lot of sexism. She was from Mexico, I believe. She faced a lot of sexism in trying to get forward in the industry. And the two of them joined forces, and they create this amazing underwater photography that is just really expressive. Also, he does. The guy also did a lot of amazing photography on his own. And we see them in the field creating these images. It can be dangerous, but the images are spellbinding. And to see what it actually takes to create this, I know I'm not doing it justice because I don't want it to sound like this is a televised coffee table book. This is much better than that, and I really wanted people to check it out because it's the kind of docuseries that doesn't get a lot of attention because it doesn't have flashy stars, it doesn't have a true crime story. It's about something that people don't know a lot about, but any compelling photo that you see, there's a story behind how it got created, and there's usually a story about the artist who made it happen. And so this is worth seeing for all of that.
Yeah, I think I'm really going to love this. I didn't know about it actually until you talked about it, so I'm very excited about it.
That's why the guy exists, by the way. That's why he's there.
That's
exactly.
right. That's right. That's right.
The gig. I wanted my list of best shows. I left some things off of it. I didn't mention Hacks, for example, which won, at the Golden Globes. I didn't. I don't think I really mentioned Baby Reindeer, even though I did like it, because I wanted to take a little space and talk about shows that people might not think about. I even talked about Hot Ones, the YouTube show, the YouTube interview show, because I think a lot of people don't even see that as television, but I see it as a smart way to try and reinvent the celebrity interview.
Yeah.
These things can be. Celebrity interviews can be predictable. They can be, overly mannered. And one way to break that down is to just have the celebrity eat a bunch of hot wings while they answer questions from a smart interviewer. And if you saw Conan O'Brien come on and turn it into a bit where he was just throwing himself into eating the hot sauce and guzzling hot sauce, and he had an actor who was playing a doctor, standing by in case he needed medical attention, which I thought he might actually need, given how much hot sauce he was eating. It just shows how you can reinvent these kind of interactions and create a new kind of television that would live on YouTube and wouldn't necessarily be found on a major streaming service or a broadcaster or a cable channel. That is the future of television in a lot of ways, and I think we really need to pay attention to it.
So another one you liked was Shrinking on Apple TV. This stars Harrison Ford. Tell us a little bit about it, and then we'll play a clip.
Sure. So Shrinking is this really sort of emotional and touching comedy where Jason Segel plays a therapist who's trying all these unorthodox things with his patients that almost cross the line of getting too involved in their lives. And then you realize that he's traumatized because his wife was killed by a drunk driver. And, he got so depressed that he let down his daughter, who was also, of course, suffering from trauma and grief. And as he tries to pull himself out of that, he leans on Harrison Ford, who is his mentor and works with him in the same office as a therapist. And Jessica Williams is also a friend, and becomes a friend with benefits for a little bit. And she's also a therapist who works in the same building. And it's sort of a found family where he has all these people in his life who's trying to help him. And then in the second season, the guy who drove the car that killed his wife shows up and wants to talk to him.
Yeah.
And so we get this whole season that's about how do you forgive somebody? Should you forgive somebody? Can you forgive somebody for something like that? And is that an essential component of healing? Which is, the really substantive storyline that just adds the extra little bit of excellence to a show that's already super funny and really entertaining to watch.
Okay, well, here's a little clip of that season 2, Shrinking. And this In this clip, the neighbor Derek, is played by Ted McGinley, is unpacking his wife's moment of infidelity with friend/therapist Gabby, played by Jessica Williams.
It doesn't matter what got her down. She always pulled herself out.
But did she reach out this time?
Kind of. She said she felt like she was underwater.
And people underwater usually are?
Snorkeling and looking at cool stuff.
No.
They're drowning.
So Liz told you she was drowning, and what did you say?
I told her she should get a grilled cheese truck.
Derek.
God damn it. How did this become my fault all of a sudden?
Pretty good clip. I should
Grilled
say.
cheese truck.
It's pretty good. clip.
Although a grilled cheese truck has cured a lot of things in my life.
Exactly. And again, Ted McGinley, here's a guy who's been a supporting player on a lot of TV shows and has never necessarily been recognized. And even in the first season of Shrinking, he just kind of showed up and said a few funny things and then kind of left. And they gave him much more to do this time. And he played it really well. And so every, little collection of characters is dealing with this idea of forgiveness. How do you forgive people? And in their case, they seem to have, in a way, the perfect marriage where his wife, played by Kristen Miller, is really acerbic and really kind of challenging. But he was such a good, such an optimistic, guy that he was a nice balance, and they seemed to have a perfect relationship until he found out that she seemed close to cheating on him. And then that really threw a wrench into their relationship, and they had to work through it, and he had to figure out how to forgive her. And so that gave him a lot to play, and we got to see Ted McGinley, do a great work and remind the industry that he's still really a great performer. That's one of the things that I love about this show, too. Harrison Ford gets to show a side of himself.
Yeah.
I mean, we always knew he was good at comedy. If you saw Working Girl, you knew he was good at comedy. But that's something, that's maybe a muscle he hasn't worked in a while, and it's great to see him embrace this gruff persona that he's developed as a star and make it work for a really excellent TV show.
Okay, we only have 60 seconds left. What are a couple of things you're dying to see that are going to be airing in the first few months of this year?
Okay, so The Pit. This is a medical drama. It stars Noah Wyle. It is not a ripoff of ER, even though one of the executive producers is John Wells, who was also executive producer of ER. It is a really well done, real-time, 15-episode drama about one shift in the life of a guy who runs an emergency room in Pittsburgh. And the only thing I will fault it for is they don't have an accent. Yin's going downtown and that. They don't say that. They don't say that. So don't look for that. So there's that. And then there's another really interesting series called American Primeval that's going to be on Netflix. It's a Western. It's very gritty. It's very violent. It's directed by and produced by Peter Berg, who also did Friday Night Lights. Oh. And it tries to really take a tough and visceral look at the settling of the West in a way that tries to be honest about how Native Americans were treated and how the Mormons reacted and how white settlers were. That's on Netflix. And then there's another show called On Call that's being done by Dick Wolf Productions. And I know Dick Wolf Productions is a company behind like Chicago Med and all these formulaic, procedurals. But this one is about patrol people in Long Beach, California. I think it's very well done. It's their first scripted series for streaming. It's going to be on Prime Video. And it is again, if you've seen the movie End of Watch with Jake Gyllenhaal, it has that feel. A lot of handheld camera work. Eric LaSalle, who you might also remember from ER, is not only a supporting player in the show. He plays a cop, but he's also a director and helped develop the visual style of the show, which is very kinetic and feels very innovative. I really liked it.
I'm very disappointed you didn't mention, speaking of Amazon Prime, Melania, the documentary coming up in 2025, but we'll just have to do that another time.
Directed by none other than Brett Ratner.
Exactly.
Yeah, enough said about that.
Eric, we love talking to you. We'll see you soon.
Eric.
Thanks so much, Eric.
Happy
Deggans.
New Year.
Always a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For us, too.
We've been speaking with Eric Deggans. He's NPR's TV critic, a contributor to NBC, MSNBC, and Boston Public Radio, thank goodness, and author of Race Baiter, How the Media Wields Dangerous Words to Divide nation. Thanks again to Eric for his time. Up next, our text segment of the day at 877-301-8970. It is our first official day of streaming on YouTube from Brighton. Jim wants to know how he looks. I admit I'm a little concerned about that too, but I'm much more interested in finding out who the audience believes caused the coffee stains on the wall of our studio. We'll read our favorite text next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Part of the GBH News Equity and Justice Unit.
Every time I've been hired as an editor, I've told my bosses I am a reporter first.
Senior editor Paul Singer.
I will lead a team, I will coach, I will train, but my first love remains my reporting. And I will still be in the community, reporting the stories and helping to amplify the voices of the communities that we have so far not really been reaching.
Elevating issues of equity and justice. GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you. And MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering dynamic short programs tailored for mid-career professionals looking to build expertise in innovation, leadership, and technology. Details at executive.mit.edu. And the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Visitors can explore a range of family dynamics through works from Manet, Mickalene Thomas, and Mary Ellen Mark in 3 new exhibitions on view now. More at gardnermuseum.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at Studio 3 in Brighton, streaming for the first time ever from Studio 3 at youtube.com/GBH. There's a couple of segments today. The one we just did and the next segment are not streaming, but in a few days we'll be 100% streaming and all that sort of stuff. So, since it is day one, I said day one, didn't I?
Day one.
Day one. We both said day one. Since we've been asking you on day one, by the way, how do we look? Which side of Marjorie is her best side? And she wants to know.
Not the side people are looking at.
She wants to know if you are buying this. I'll try to be gentle. Buying this lie she's been perpetrating about me being the person responsible for a few coffee stains on the walls. What are the people? That would be our listeners. What are they saying, Marjorie?
Well, let me tell you this right now, Jim.
Yeah, please.
The coffee stains are all on your side of the studio.
Yeah.
Lance and Lynn isn't buying
I'm not here
it.
every day, by the way. Sometimes I take a day off.
Okay, Lance and Lynn is giving you a break. He says it isn't coffee stains, poor Jim. Yeah. It's inadvertent art.
Okay, fine. There you go.
Somebody else also says, Martha watching on YouTube says you look like Rip Van Winkle. But
there's
a theme. There is a theme here. The theme is all about the trash. And
behind you.
I have cleaned up the trash.
What are they saying? Well, let's hear what they say.
Well, I love seeing you live in the studio, but you might want to clean up the refuse in the background. And then it's a dark and cavernous space for you in Brighton, like a cave. Please clean your ledge behind you, Marjorie. What's with the toilet paper and the trash?
What is with the toilet paper?
Well, in case I need to blow my nose during the show, if I have a cold, I want to have
it's not dark. We have 2 huge, what are these called? almost floor to ceiling windows looking out on Market Street. It's not dark at all.
Well, I know. Well, maybe.
What's with the refuse behind you, though?
Well, there's a lot of refuse. Apparently, I've cleaned it up.
Who has toilet paper in their office?
I love seeing you guys in the studio, but a few questions. What's with the garbage on the ledge behind Marjorie? Was that her breakfast wrapped in tinfoil? Actually, it's my peanut butter and banana sandwich, which I still have. Here it is. Here's the refuse.
Thank you. By the way, here's an anonymous texter. Forget seeing you on air. I want to see, I don't even need to hear, the off-air body language. Come on. What is Jim like during a news break? Give up the Jekyll and Hyde that we know exists. Maybe someday we will.
And some people think you have too much trash. Michelle in Revere. She says, I love seeing you live in the studio. I'm more like Jim than I thought. I, too, have a red Solo cup in my office filled with plastic utensils. That's the one right behind you there.
I do, yeah.
And chopsticks.
Chopsticks, yeah.
And I sometimes have straggling wrappers lying around like Marjorie has behind her.
Can I just say one thing?
I clean them up.
There is a theme in this, by the way.
They like that it's not too staged,
Well, let me
Jim.
just say, the vast majority of the texts were about Marjorie, and she has chosen to read the ones critical of me in my area. And I would say her credibility is somewhat suspect. This is what she had to say the other day. Judge her by this. Listen.
Okay. I'm sort of out of it now in a general kind of way.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's right.
Listen, can you play that one more
I'm
time?
out of it.
One more
I'm sort of
time.
out of it now in a general kind of way.
Right, exactly. That's the person you're believing about the coffee
That's right.
stains and
I'm
the
out of it.
refuse.
Who am I?
And that sort
and
of
why
thing.
am I here?
Okay, what else are they saying?
Well, they're suggesting a tidy up. And another person
Mm-hmm.
wants to know, does this new format mean, this is anonymous actually.
Yeah, anonymous, actually.
Does this new format mean no more days when Marjorie can put on her apron and bake banana bread during the show while working from
Well, you're
home?
still occasionally be home, and they'll still see it. We'll see you on Zoom, but I mean,
That's
they'll
right.
see you on the same
I look
deal.
better on Zoom. I think I should.
You know, by the way, your obsession. You look fabulous here, by the way.
You always say
you
that,
look
Jim.
almost like Golden Globe runway-esque ready kind
Boy,
of thing.
I
you
tell
do.
you what. Did you watch the Golden
Did you
Globes
see
last
Miley
night?
Cyrus? Of course I did.
I mean, one person was better looking than the next
Okay,
person.
keep
It was
going now.
unbelievable. But I mean, the overall theme is that we've got too much
Maddie
trash
is now
here
zooming
in
the
studio.
camera into the trash behind Jim. By the way, the reason for that is because the trash can, let me point in this direction, the trash can and the recycling can is behind me.
And someone
That's
wants
why
to know about your Schweppes. You have a lot of Schweppes
I
over there,
drink-
Jim.
I have a case of seltzer. I
And,
drink
and they
a lot
want
of
to know
seltzer.
what's wrong with the regular Schweppes. You have the orange Schweppes,
Orange,
apparently.
yes. I don't drink plain seltzer.
So I guess people could see everything in the studio,
Yeah.
including my
I
sandwich.
think the common
Here it
theme is, okay, you don't have to hold it up again. I think the refuse beyond you, including toilet paper. Can you see that over there?
I moved the toilet paper.
You did.
I just have my collection of mugs now.
Okay.
That's it.
That's it. So every day, again, a couple of exceptions today, but starting on Thursday or maybe next week, 100% of the show will be streaming live
That
right
is
here
correct.
on whatever that is, YouTube something.
So we very much appreciate your texts
We really
on
do.
this important
We really
issue
do,
of the
yeah.
day, our first day that we're live streaming here, at least mostly live streaming.
I'm sort of out
Coming
of it
up,
now in a general kind of way, says Marjorie.
I'm sort of out of it now in a general kind of way.
Exactly. I mean, why even talk to her?
That's
You
right.
said it. I
That
didn't
poor
say it.
Marjorie Egan, she's really out of it.
In a general kind of way.
In a general kind of way. I'm sort of out of it.
Join GBH on January 31st for a virtual tea tasting with members of the cast and creative team of the Masterpiece Mystery Series, Miss Scarlet. A tea kit will be mailed to you. Just sign up by January 10th at gbh.org/events.
Support for GBH comes from you and the Peabody Essex Museum, presenting Saints, Sinners, Lovers, and Fools, 300 years of Flemish masterworks. On view this winter. For tickets, you can visit pem.org. And the University of Massachusetts Amherst, ranked the #1 public university in New England by U.S. News & World Report. You can learn more about research, innovation, and economic impact for the Commonwealth at umass.edu.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
Seed oils. Call or text. Do you even know what a seed oil is? Are you more panicked about the health risks of canola oil and grapeseed oil, or the people going to war against them, arguing for a return to super healthy butter and beef tallow? That's next on the third hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The federal government's closed today because of a massive snowstorm, but Congress is in session this hour to carry out the constitutional duty of certifying the results of the 2024 election.
Will be presiding over the joint session of Congress, and instead of spreading false rumors or lies about a rigged election or stolen election, as Trump did 4 years ago, she has conceded that she was defeated.
NPR's Mara Lyson reporting. Donald Trump is due to be sentenced later this week in New York City for falsifying business records. NPR's Jimena Bustillo reports the president-elect is fighting for a delay.
Trump lawyer Todd Blanche argues that all court proceedings should be paused while they appeal the decision from New York Judge Juan Merchan that Trump did not have presidential immunity in this case. In May, a jury found Trump guilty of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. A few months later, the Supreme Court decided in a separate case that presidents do have immunity from prosecution for official acts taken in office. Trump's lawyers in his New York case said the Supreme Court ruling means some evidence in the state case should be excluded. But Judge Merchan ruled last month that Trump did not have immunity. And
Raphael Nam reports more gains are expected this year.
Bitcoin is in the middle of an incredible ride. It's becoming more mainstream, with investment funds that now track the price of Bitcoin. These funds attracted over $35 billion last year. Crypto investors are also optimistic as Donald Trump is set to return to the White House. Trump has promised to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the planet, and he has picked regulators for his next administration who are known to be friendly to the crypto sector. That may be great news for Bitcoin investors, but it is alarming critics who caution that Bitcoin is very volatile and needs more stringent regulations.
That's Raphael Nam. It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The weather has been wreaking havoc at airports around the country, and as of about 20 minutes ago, FlightAware says there were 5 canceled and 32 delayed flights at Logan Airport. If you are traveling by plane today, you may want to be in touch with your airline. Meanwhile, the snow and ice storms in the Midwest and points south of New York are causing lots of problems on the roadways as well. Boston police have arrested a Charlestown man on murder charges, the first one in Boston for 2025. They say he allegedly gunned down Joseph Donahue of Charlestown, whose body was found in the parking lot of the Main Street 7-Eleven on Saturday. Homicide detectives say 45-year-old David Menezes was arrested at the Camden Street development in Roxbury last night. Federal prosecutors are investigating Barnstable Democratic State Rep Christopher Flanagan over alleged potential criminal activity involving him in his re-election campaign. A statement released by Barnstable Police does not include any details, but does say that local police received a report in October involving Flanagan and his re-election campaign. Flanagan is also under investigation for felony larceny charges. He won re-election to his House seat in November, was sworn in along with his colleagues when the legislature began its new session last week. Flanagan, who lives in Dennis, was penalized earlier this year for misleading state regulators about payments for a campaign mailer. 29 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indeed, designed to be an end-to-end hiring solution for businesses of all sizes to attract, interview, and hire candidates, all from one platform. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR.
Houston Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the GBH studio 3 in Brighton and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News, but unfortunately not this segment.
And don't ask why. Just don't ask. Okay, thank you.
I won't ask.
No, I didn't mean you. I meant the listeners. Go ahead.
We are back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with Governor Maura Healey from 11 to noon, plus Trenny Casey, CNN's John King, and Lee Pelton from the Boston Foundation. No tickets or RSVP needed. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Marjorie. So on the 19th of this month, the Embrace Martin Luther King awardees will be announced. They'll be honoring some special local couples. Former Governor Baker and his wife Lauren, former Governor Deval Patrick, his wife Diane, and our own Irene Monroe and Emmett Price have all revved up. Oh, wait. It's not Emmett. I'm so sorry. You'll have to wait, Emmett. It's Irene and her wife, the great Dr. Thea James. We're joined now by one of those honorees on Zoom for All Revved Up, Irene Monroe and Emmett G. Price III. Reverend Monroe is a syndicated religion columnist and the Boston voice for Detroit's African American Heritage Trail. Reverend Price is the founding pastor of the Community of Love Christian Fellowship in Allston, the inaugural dean of Africana Studies at Berklee College of Music, and together, of course, they host GBH's All Revved Up podcast, available wherever you get your podcast. Hello, you two, and congratulations, Irene.
Irene.
Happy New Year.
Okay.
Happy New Year. And Emmett is my radio spouse.
That's right. That's right. But okay, so we got the governor and his wife, 2 governors and their wives, and Irene and your wife. I have a whole new, you're like a big star now, Irene.
Congratulations. It's really great.
Yeah, congratulations.
Listen, I'm so honored by it, particularly when this is the first time that they're honoring a queer couple and stuff. So it says that even LGBTQ folks are in the struggle for civil rights, which was, Bayard Rustin was the chief architect of the March on Washington that catapulted King to a world stage here, and his wife Coretta continue that, legacy around LGBTQ advocacy. But I need to say this to you folks. I invited all three of you because were it not for you folks, I would not have the platform that I do have. And it has really brought in a lot of LGBT folks, a lot of parents who have absolutely reached out to me. And I can't thank you. I always learn from the orphanage. You thank the bridge that carries you across. And so the all revved up segment has been that bridge. So I thank you.
That
Well,
is
there you
terrifically
go.
kind.
We're
It
gonna
really
we're
is.
gonna be there. I'm consulting Rent the Runway right now for my special dress. So
In all seriousness, though, it's really
yeah,
great. We're
it's
really proud
fantastic.
of you both, and we can't wait.
So we're going to play a little sound from former President Jimmy Carter, who, of course, has passed away. His funeral is going to be on Thursday. But here he is at his 1974 inaugural, quoting Scripture.
He has showed thee, O man, what is good. And what doth the Lord require of thee, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God.
So he did quote, obviously, we just heard the speech, but to me, he was a president who was indeed a deep man of deep faith, who really didn't wear it on his sleeve as much as other people who weren't actually men of such deep faith. But what'd you think, Reverends? Let's start with you, Emmett, about Jimmy Carter's faith and his politics.
Yeah, I mean, extraordinary human being. And again, I wasn't privy to vote for him. I was just a little too young. But he was consistent in his values. And unlike many folks, particularly in contemporary politics, he took the good and he also took the bad because of his consistency, and he never wavered. And I think the other piece about him was a human being who loved other human beings, and not just his wife and not just his family, but other people. And that, again, is another rarity for a politician of his stature during his time.
Yeah. Well, I got to vote for him. I refer to him as Jimmy the Baptist because he redefined evangelicals. He was a president with a moral compass. I think it is particularly important particularly on this day, January 6th, to juxtapose Jimmy the Baptist, to Donald the Bible thumper, in terms of what really is a moral compass. He taught Sunday school for decades. That Bible verse that he read was Malachi 6:8. I like the fact that what he always did was he looked at life from really Christ. He interfaced it and interacted with people, always in many ways asking the question, what would Jesus do? And he's always quoted, famous theologians. He understood Jews, Muslims, and Christian had a common and a religious ancestor, which is that we are all the sons and daughters of Abraham. So he understood the interconnection and intersectionality of faith and politics, in a lived reality moment.
But, I think a key word, you used the word sincerity or authenticity a minute ago, Emmett, something like that. I mean, the great George Burns line, sincerity is the key to success. If you learn how to fake that, you've got it made. And it was because it was so real. I often find these religious, forget Trump, who's obviously a total religious phony, but I often find these religious things, references by Pauls, so oppressive and so inappropriate.
Because what they're doing is absolutely the opposite of what the faith teaches.
Right, because it fit him and it
Yeah.
was sincere, but it is amazing for somebody whose faith was the deepest and talked about it, that the likes of me, a non-believer, found it so compelling, and I re-listened to it last night and it really is, it's amazing.
You know what I didn't know, though? Remember when he said in the Playboy interview that he had lusted after lots of women in his heart, even though he'd never committed adultery, that his approval rating dropped by 15%. What a different time, because the article was in Playboy.
Right, they said it wasn't even the analysis wasn't even the content of what he said,
So, boy,
but the vehicle for the thing.
Think how things have changed.
And that's the point about the consistency, though, right? The consistency of him being, one who was sincere and authentic. At times it won him favor, and at times it was the cause of his demise.
Yeah, absolutely. But timing is everything. So we got to look at him within a context. because I do wonder now, would he be elected, especially in terms of his position on women's rights, LGBT rights,
Yeah.
and also his stance on Palestine here. So he comes after Nixon and Ford. And, one of the things he said during his inauguration is that I would not tell a lie. And he stayed very, very, very consistent about this. This is a man who redefines what born again Christian means. Now the second time we heard about born again Christian comes from Baby Bush. And he ran on this platform of compassionate conservatism, and it was anything but compassionate because he used LGBT issues in many to sort of bring up what we now understand to be the mega group here. But I think what we got to understand about Jimmy Carter, I think of Jimmy Carter the way I think of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. They had a born again experience due to black religion. Jimmy Carter's father's farm, who his father, as you know, was a staunch segregationist.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, but because they lived in this predominantly black area, he let Jimmy play with black kids. So Jimmy grew up with black kids, understood and liked black religion. He said that's where he felt the spirit of God, and he also liked jazz. He instituted the Black Music Month. So I mean, what happens is that having that conversion experience, that was his born again experience, crossing over that segregation line, and to see a people who have been subjugated to say, oh, they too are the children of God.
And let me just pick up on one thing you said that I meant to mention the other day when we were discussing his foreign policy history, and I didn't. You mentioned he might have a hard time getting elected because of what he said about Palestinians, and obviously he used the term apartheid. The flip side of that that's really important is were it not for his bringing Egypt's leader, Sadat, to the table, I mean, arguably that did as much for peace for Israel as virtually anything. So I think you're right. The apartheid line would probably be a problem. If you step back for a second, what he did for Israel's security in those accords was just obviously historic.
But if you remember, though, Anwar Sadat was assassinated, if I got that correct, didn't he? Yeah. I mean, so yes, he did bring about that, but we beginning to see the early steps of when you compromise in a society that is about to be as polarized as it is today, that compromise to them always looks like a zero-sum game. But he did the right thing. He walked the walk. And I appreciate that. And we need more courageous warriors like him.
One last thing on this. There's a piece in the Religion News Service that I think you guys saw about whether or not part of the resurgence, if there is to be one of the Democrats, is just that they should embrace religion again. And Emmett, this is directed at your comment at the beginning. It seems to me, yeah, do it if it's sincere. And if it's not sincere, if it's purely for political advantage, people see through it. Of course, they don't see through Trump's, do they? So I'm contradicting myself. So what do you think about this notion that the Democrats would be well suited to integrate a religious pitch into their message as they try to rise from the ashes there, Emmett?
I think if the Democrats were smart, the Democrats would move away from organized religion and have this understanding of values, of morals, of virtues that can be more universal than organized religion in this season. Right now, organized religion is creating tension around human trust, and because of organized religion, and I'll say this as a pastor, we're trusting each other less.
Right.
And so I think if the Democratic Party was going to do something significant and substantial in the season ahead, it would actually build more human trust with one another, even across our differences. And I don't think organized religion is going to be that catalyst for that.
But yeah, I agree. I agree because I think, number one, I think two things. We're seeing that why should they worry about their shortage of religious voters when more and more Americans no longer go to church or have a religion?
Right.
Yeah, that group particular. I think that the best thing that they can do is not only what Emmett say we're people of faith and people of no faith. Really, we embrace everyone. I don't think that they're doing anything wrong. I think the problem with the Democrats, particularly who have been out there, we don't talk enough on the other side of the fence, and we don't really look at what we really do have in common. So if you're saying that the price of eggs is the issue, you need to tune into that, because that's affecting anybody. That crosses politics. So I don't think religion is the way to go. And I think that if we do that, suggest that we should go in the route of trying to get religious voters, we're not upholding the Constitution, which is the separation between church and state.
We're talking to the Revs, Emmett G.
But
Price III and Irene Monroe.
But there is a real divide here, because and generally speaking, a lot of white evangelicals, born agains, and Republicans talk about their faith all the time. Now, Nancy Pelosi, who's a Catholic, and I believe she's a genuine Catholic, may be a little bit around the edges. Or, Barack Obama mentioned, we all worship an awesome God, and then he kind of retreated from that. So it's kind of interesting the way Democrats don't really want to mention, and I've said to you guys a million times, I always think, the kitchen table conversion of Martin Luther King, he was a mystic, but we don't want to talk about that because somehow that makes people nervous. And why? So why is it makes you nervous when it's Democrats or King, and not? Why can these evangelicals constantly wear their faith on their sleeve, and they don't get called on?
You just self-corrected yourself,
right,
because there's a racial element here.
There's a big racial element
here.
There's a
big, right? And so, King may have been a mystic, his mentor, Howard Thurman, certainly was a mystic, but they were two black men in a nation that still has not come to grips with this challenge of race, right? And so white evangelicals can be proud. White evangelicals can spew a white theology that is male dominant, that is, but black people have suffered at the hands of that. And so we don't want to continue to propagate that same kind of tenet to disempower, disenfranchise, and really disaggregate human people. So I think there's a racial element here that we have to look at.
And a class element. And I think one of the things you got to realize too, that even if, let's look at Obama. Obama very much was a Christian, but yet the evangelicals, the MAGA folks, thought he was a Manchurian Muslim.
Right.
So to uplift, Emmett's point of view, it's really about a white Christian hegemony that basically wants to control every aspect of American life here. And see, religion becomes the cloak or the guise in which they can do that, because we know that a lot of our tenets are built on a Christian ethos, so that's what works for that particular demographic group here. We gain nothing, basically in terms of trying to, disassemble that MAGA group. I think what we can do is get more people to understand that you are okay. You are in God's eyes, whether you believe in religion or not.
So let me ask, I don't mean to insult either of you, but starting with Irene, was that you speaking or was that a bot? Was that an AI? I read this story about, and again, I'm not a big churchgoer, meaning I don't go at all, as you know. I'm not spending too much time in synagogue either, other than for an occasional bar mitzvah, not mine. Well, I went for mine. But when I read this story about AI, it's one thing, and most of the religious leaders quoted there said the same thing. It's fine to use AI to do research and that sort of thing, but the notion that there are AI-generated sermons being given is so antithetical, at least to me, as to what's supposed to happen from the pulpit. I mean, Emmett, is there any place for AI in the sermon side of things?
No, there absolutely is not. Absolutely not. I mean, the historical and the cultural aspect of the sermon was supposed to be that God revealed a word for the people.
At that moment,
for that moment, for that precious time. And so that revelation and that, connectivity to a local congregation and the local challenges of those local people cannot be manifest by some bot. Some
bot.
It's crazy, but I think it raises a question here. Can God speak through AI? And I feel like that like all arts and technology, the creation of, AI can be seen as an expression of God-given intelligence. But Marjorie, you will appreciate this.
What?
Because I remember something that Pope Francis said, and I agreed with him for once. And this is his quote. He said that our humanity enable us to look at things with God's eyes, to see connections, situations, events, and to uncover the real meaning. He said that without this wisdom, life becomes bland. Such wisdom cannot be sought through machines. And I just have to say, amen. And I prefer to draw from my own experience when giving my own sermons.
Yeah, that's a great quote from him. Every once in a while, he does something right, Irene. Right?
That's right. Amen.
And
That's
probably
right. Amen.
because he's 87. I don't know if he's tackling chatbot. Do you think he is over there in the Vatican? I don't know. But this next piece I found to be fascinating because you had a really honest minister. The story is about political diversion within churches, diversity within churches. The MAGA group, the liberals can possibly be in the same congregation. And this honest reverend says toward the end of this piece, in college I was told to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. But it's hard to afflict the comfortable because they're the ones writing the big checks that keeps the lights on in the church. So it's talking about this difficulty in the Trump era of speaking out against Trump if you are worried about offending your congregants or vice versa. It's an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big challenge here, but you do want to kind of, if you have a politically charged and conscious congregation, you want it to be purple. But I think the biggest challenge is this. You always want to comfort your congregation, but you also want to confront it. You want to give them a charge that would help them sort of raise questions about life as well as change their own life. Nowadays, what people want is a devotional kind of service that validates their point of view. So they don't want a sermon nowadays, given where we are, that has a social gospel bent. I mean, it's theology light versus a theology grounded in I call reality. It's sort of like whether you want to listen to Joel Osteen, or you want to listen to T.D. Jakes, and they both are evangelical ministers.
This is
Go ahead, Emma.
I was going to say this is an interesting dilemma. I come out of a faith tradition that has not benefited so much back, at least through my personal experience, through preaching for checks. And so I think
for checks.
I think in this season that we're in with the church, where the economics of Boston, the economics of property, real estate, the economics of technology, the economics of bots, the economics of everything, folks are challenged to be people pleasers rather than to say what thus saith the Lord. Even if you preach a sermon on a certain day and everybody walks out, at least you have that Jimmy Carter spirit that you're consistent in your values, your beliefs, and your morals. And that's
But Emmett, I got to say this here. We got to be honest here, because I grew up with Reverend Ike. I mean, prosperity gospel has always been haunting us and trailing us here. It's true. We got to be honest here. You know that you have to sort of tailor your sermon because you know that Sister Marjorie is going to put $100 in the plate and Jim maybe $1. So you gotta keep Marjorie's wallet open, and you gotta stretch Jimmy's pocket. So no, it's politics even from the pulpit.
But
let me see if I can do this right then, Irene. Happy birthday to you. What kind of check
back to you.
What kind of check am I gonna get?
Okay.
Yeah. But we're almost out of time here, so we got to be. Are we out of time? We are out of time.
We are out of time.
Oh, we are out of time.
But we can't, since they're both talking about where they can tell the truth from the pulpit, the story we didn't get to from the religion news services, apparently religion is making some Americans doubt seed oils.
Yes, seed
oils.
oils.
So the good news is we're hearing the truth from the pulpit. On seed oil, yeah?
Now, are you going to be giving any sermons in the near future, Emmett?
On safflower oil or no?
About the sins
No, not me.
No? Are you concerned about seed oil, Irene?
No, because we can't, because Emmett and I is in this vortex of high Black employment month. We got a lot of MLK sermons
Well, that's
to do.
right.
Oh, okay, that's right. No time for seed oil. Okay, well, we're going to talk all about it next with our
Hey,
listeners. So.
we're going to see you on the 19th, but one more
Thank
time,
you.
congratulations
Thank
to
you
you
all.
and Thea. It's really,
you all.
it's a great
Thank you
honor
all,
for
really.
two
God
really
bless you
deserving
both.
people.
Yeah.
Thanks. Great
Thank
to see you guys. Happy New Year.
Thank you so much. Glad to see you both in 2025. We've been speaking with the Reverends Irene Monroe and Emmett Price. Irene Monroe is a syndicated religion columnist and the Boston voice for Detour's African American Heritage Trail. Emmett G. Price III is founding pastor at Community of Love Christian Fellowship in Alston, the inaugural dean of Africana Studies at Berklee College of Music. Together they host GBH's All Revved Up podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, up next, back to those seed oils for just a second. We just breezed past it with the Revs, but we're going to open the lines with you to get your thoughts on the paradigm shift that's happening. A war between beef tallow and grapeseed oil, between butter and olive oil. Did you know what canola oil may be doing to you? It may be weakening you, Jim.
I do know
So
now.
the neighbors could take over. We're going to tell you all about this up next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, and we're going to be back streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
It has been 4 years since insurrectionists stormed the U.S. Capitol. Since then, some have spun the narrative of the attack, painting it as an act of patriotism. And now, with a second Trump presidency, scholars are grappling with January 6th's legacy.
People are so hungry to sort of better understand what's happening in America.
That story on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Mass Health Connector, dedicated to expanding health insurance access to uninsured and low-income residents with Connector Care. More at mahealthconnector.org or 1-877-MA-ENROLL. And Concord Park, a Volunteers of America senior community in Concord, Mass., offering seniors the privacy and independence of their own apartment home, as well as care and support to help meet their needs now and as they age. ConcordPark.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Donald Trump was just certified about 15 seconds ago as the winner of the presidential election. I'm Jim Browdy. She's Marjorie Egan by Congress. They're counting the electoral votes from each of the states. We're broadcasting live from our GBH Studio 3 in Brighton, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow, Governor joins us from 11 to 12, Trenny Casey, CNN's John King, Lee Pelton from the Boston Foundation, etc. So the topic for the remainder of the show, Marjorie, seed oil and you. That's our, isn't that?
It's the Hateful Eight, Jim.
Now, Hateful Eight. One of the leading threats to public health in America, this is according to RFK Jr., isn't gun violence or mental health crises, it's seed oil.
Seed oil.
Thank you. Can I hear him say it one more time? Exactly. Long touted as a healthy alternative to high-fat butter, lard, beef tallow, vegetable oils are coming under fire from RFK's Make America Healthy Again campaign. It's canola, corn, soybeans, sunflower, cottonseed, safflower, grapeseed. You ever heard of rice bran oil?
No.
Good. Thank you for that. They're out apparently in 2025. Beef tallow, whatever that is in. Exactly. Now, having said that, food scientists don't agree with RFK Jr. They say it's the quantity of the fried or ultra-processed food and less what the oils are that it's cooked in. So are you still chomping down on that supersized McNugget order fried in canola oil? Or are you shifting away from seed oils and ushering the natural processes of, let's say, beef tallow and butter, maybe even opting for some beef tallow skincare over those earthy oils you've been lathering all over your fine lines for years? So essentially, where are you on the oil question? What oil are you using? When you go in to order fries, for example, I'll ask you, Marjorie, you go and order fries. Do you say, I'd like 2 orders of fries fried in beef tallow?
Well.
And what happens if you say that, if the person who is the server says, I'm happy to do that with one issue, What is beef tallow? What do you say to
Well,
him?
McDonald's used to use beef tallow.
What is
as,
beef
as we
tallow?
know, it's a fat. It comes from like sheep
Why-
and other
obviously,
things.
it's a fat. It doesn't come from a sheep. It
I
comes
think
from
it comes
a
from
cow.
a sheep. Okay,
Cow.
it comes from a cow.
That's why it's called beef.
People think it's going to
Beef.
prevent their wrinkles too.
Okay,
That's not
whatever.
not going to work.
Okay, go ahead.
But anyway, they used to do the beef tallow in McDonald's apparently
They did?
until this Omaha philanthropist Phil Sokoloff said the beef tallow had given him heart problems.
Oh.
So he convinced McDonald's and other fast food chains to abandon beef tallow and use vegetable oil for cooking the fries. But I just want to point out the reason we were talking this briefly with the Rebs
Why?
about this, well, because there's a religious thing going on here. Apparently, according to some religious people, it's a matter of faith to resist the hateful eight, all these oils. The
Thank you.
seed oils are seen as part of a plot to weaken conservative Christians and allow the immigrants to take over. There's a guy called Andrew Torba, who's the head of something called Gab's social media site and a self-described Christian nationalist,
cares about this.
says the ultimate goal of our enemies is the destruction of our nations and the replacement of our people with those more easily controlled and manipulated, i.e., get rid of the hateful eight, go back to butter and tallow, and stop eating canola oil.
Can I
and
respond to
vegetable oil.
this?
Mm-hmm.
You look very good on the streaming just now. I was watching you
I
on the
did?
streaming. I wasn't watching. No, don't look at yourself in the mic. You see the back of your head.
When I turn,
know,
all I
thought,
can see
well,
is the
then
back
don't
of my
turn.
head.
I'm looking
That
for
doesn't
you.
help.
So we want to know. Let's get cut down to RFK Jr. In fact, let's listen to RFK Jr. since he is one of our heroes. Here he is laying out the whole hateful eight thing or something like that for Fox's Rachel Campos Duffy. Here he is.
Seed oils are one of the most unhealthy ingredients that we have in foods. It's one of the worst things you can eat, and it's almost impossible to avoid. If you eat any processed food, you're going to be eating seed oil.
So we want to know where you are on the issue of seed oil. What is the fat that you are using to fry, whatever you do with fat? What do you do with it? And what do you think of the fact that I said, do you know what beef tallow is? And Marjorie said, I think it's sheep.
I'm sort of out of it now in a general kind of way.
Exactly.
That's right.
So
I'm out of it now.
beef tallow is
in a general
probably
sort of
not
way.
from a sheep.
It's not from a sheep. You are absolutely right. But
Thank
here's
you.
the thing.
What is the thing? How about the number? 877-301.
877-301-8970.
Correct.
877-301-8970.
Yeah, right.
RFK Jr.,
I know
who
he
may
is.
be about to take over the whole Health and Human Services Department,
yeah.
is right
Sure.
about processed foods. They're not
Yeah.
good for you.
Ultra processed.
That's right.
Thank
and
you.
one of the reasons they're not good for you
Yeah.
is because in addition to all those processed ingredients, they also have a lot of these hateful eight in them.
They do.
But the issue is not giving up the hateful eight. The
No.
issue is giving up the ultra processed foods.
Exactly.
And I would like to point out that
What is it?
our executive producer, Jane Bologna, who is an Italian
does he know about
expert,
this?
says that olive oil, you know why olive oil is not included in the hateful eight?
Because it's not from a seed?
It's from the fruit of the
It
olive.
is?
Yes. You
So
can
do you
go
prefer
wild
fruit
with the olive
oils,
oil.
beef tallow, or seed oil, the hateful eight?
I mean,
Did you ever hear the expression the hateful eight before this today?
And are you
Can I
no,
just
I
ask you that
didn't.
question?
I didn't hear this. And did you know that there's this idea that eating these hateful eight is going to weaken conservative Christians?
I do know that.
It's going to
I knew
allow
that.
the people coming here from Mexico, wherever else they're
Aiden
coming,
has a question
to
for you.
take over
Can
the
I ask you a
country.
question?
It's a hateful eight conspiracy to overthrow the United
Okay.
States. Canola oil is coming after Christian conservatives.
Aiden wants to know. Aiden is our coworker. He wants to know if olive oil comes from sheep. Do you
No,
know?
it does not.
Okay. And by the way, if you actually know, Marjorie is pretending, I know her fairly well, that she knows what beef tallow is. She has no idea. It's not just because of the sheep thing. She has no idea what beef tallow is. If you know what beef tallow is and you use it, you have to meet both criteria. You know what it is and you use it. We will pop you up to the top of the list.
Beef tallow is the rendered
You're
form
reading
of
it.
suet, a type of fat that comes from cows and sheep.
That's not true.
In its solid form, beef tallow is waxy white or slightly yellow, like whipped butter or shortening.
You know where she's reading that from? MrPillow.com. 877-301-8970.
Here's why I'm mentioning
Can we
beef
talk to
tallow
people
in
or
addition
what?
to the food issue.
How about lard? You
Because
ever had lard?
People think it's going to help your
People
your
thinks?
skin. Yes, it's going to fight acne and hydrate your skin and
Hmm.
give you glow boosting benefits. That's not true either. Shea butter and mango butter are supposedly much better for that kind of
Well,
stuff.
speaking-
but
since
this
you're-
is the guy who's going to be running healthcare
I
in
know
the
he
United
is.
States of
He's
America.
RFK Jr.
RFK Jr.
Now, on a related note, since Marjorie, as always, is taking us way off topic, we have some archive sound from 2014. It's not seed oil, But here's an E-News report on Gwyneth Paltrow, who's one of our favorite health people.
Yep.
Her use of coconut oil, which is an oil, Marjorie,
Yep.
from sheep, to replace nightly mouthwash in a practice. You know what it's called? Oil pulling. Here she is. Here's the anchor, and then Paltrow. Here it is.
Gwyneth Paltrow even trades mouthwash for coconut oil.
It's consistency and discipline.
It's called oil pulling. And in a phone interview, Gwyneth tells our lifestyle and fashion expert Xana Roberts-Rossi she swishes around coconut oil in her mouth for 20 minutes, saying it's great for oral health, whitening teeth, and clearing up your skin.
And I should say, she uses coconut oil to as mouthwash. I use beef tallow. So 877-301-8970. An anonymous texter says seed oils kill brainworms while beef tallow keeps them healthy. RFK Jr. is just trying to keep his pet alive. Let's go to Jane in Concord.
Hi, Jane.
You're first. Hi. Where are you on the seed oil issue there, Jane?
Hi. Well, I would love to if you had registered dietitians or food scientists on occasionally to talk about things like this, because I think people are really interested in nutrition but have absolutely no idea. When someone says eat well, they don't know what that means. So, but I am trying to avoid vegetable oils.
Oh.
I do eat snack chips sometimes, but I don't cook with them. I use coconut oil for cooking. I've heard of that mouth rinsing thing from a dental hygienist, but I don't know anything about how much it works.
Oh.
And if you think about it, if we were really eating nose to tail with local animals, tallow and that sort of thing would be a product we would use with the local animals that we would raise properly.
Why are you avoiding vegetable oil?
Excellent question.
Okay, so my favorite nutrition book is Perfect Health Diet by Paul Jaminet, Jaminet.
Yeah.
And it's based on paleo, but it's more moderate than the paleo diet. And they recommend avoiding vegetable oils because they're inflammatory. They oxidize very quickly, so they're not good for your body.
Okay.
They're
Yeah,
not
that's
stable.
Yep. That's one of RFK's theories too. But the people that the experts that they consult says that butter for being a saturated fat is worse in terms of heart disease.
The experts say, not RFK.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Now, Jane, let me ask you one last question. Why do you think we need a nutritionist when we have the expertise that Marjorie and I bring to the table?
Well, you guys have a lot of questions about nutrition.
You're right. You're actually right. We're with you. We'll try to get one. Jane, thank you for an excellent call. We really appreciate it.
Okay, they have these medical experts in this story that is, I think this is from the
New York Times.
Axios?
New York Times. I think, yeah.
Anyway, it would be a mistake, supposedly, to replace seed oils with ingredients like butter, lard, or tallow, which are high in saturated fats. Seed oils work especially well in recipes that require oils with a neutral flavor, like salad dressings, or for high heat cooking, like with a vegetable.
What do you?
stir-fry.
I just didn't. I realized. What do you use? You haven't disclosed. What's your deal?
I love olive oil.
So do I. Love olive oil. Yeah.
And I have found.
Do you ever use it for mouthwash?
No, I've never used it for mouthwash, but I have found, better late than never, that there's a difference between regular olive oil and expensive
high quality. Oh, you
olive
can
oil.
taste the difference.
Oh my God. Yeah, I just discovered that over Christmas at an olive oil store.
You know what I'm getting you for your birthday?
They wanted to tell me they were not part of the Hateful Eight.
You know what I'm getting you for sheep tallow? I am. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was
That's right.
the
You're
sheep
going
I'm
to
getting
town.
the tallow
You're
from.
going to town, Jim. It turns out it comes from sheep as well.
Well, wait a second. When it comes out of the sheep, how does it come out of the sheep? You don't have to kill a sheep.
I don't know.
It's like a milk
I
thing,
don't
right?
have these
Like
details.
you milk the sheep?
I don't know.
Why don't you have a nutritionist answering these questions like the first caller suggested?
Patrick from Providence wants to know about peanut oil. Peanuts are not
I can
seeds.
answer that.
They're not in the list. They're not in the Hateful Eight list.
Exactly.
It's canola, corn, cottonseed, soybean, sunflower, safflower, grapeseed, and rice bran.
You didn't answer my question on that either. Do you know what rice bran oil is?
I do not.
You do not.
Do you?
Do you have a nutritionist who would know? Let's go to Rebecca in Hancock. You're next.
We are talking about the fact that the guy who may have the Health and Human Services Department
hates the Hateful Eight.
Anti-vaxxer, and he's cracking down
on the Hateful Eight.
On the Hateful Eight.
Yeah. Okay. It's not like who wrote this? It's not
God.
like a milk thing, Jim. They do sheep liposuction.
Oh God!
And that's how that is disgusting. Is that Zoe? Is that true? Or you're just doing that to upset me? No, that's not. Oh, it's not true. Thank you. Alaska's your name.
Elaine
Western
loves
Mass?
beef tallow too as a
I love that.
skincare item, but the dermatologists say
Okay,
no,
fine.
Elaine.
Okay.
They say and it's very bad for acne if
fine.
you have acne because it's a clog pore.
Alaska is
plugger.
Alaska your first name?
Yes.
That's fabulous.
It is.
I love that. Why is your name Alaska?
Credit goes to my mother.
What?
Credit goes to my mother. It was her idea.
I love it. Do you like it?
I love it.
Well, I think it's beautiful. Okay, so what's up?
So I actually recently got a deep fryer for Christmas from my boyfriend.
Oh, that's great.
It was a gift from him to us, we'll say, because we all use it for his benefit.
Sure.
And we like to use avocado oil
Oh.
for making homemade French fries, homemade chicken nuggets. It has a pretty high smoke point. You don't really want to fry with olive oil, but avocado oil is good for frying.
And why is that? What'd you say? Because there's a high what point?
So it has a high smoke point, so you can fry things. Usually the fryer's about 350, 375 degrees.
Oh.
So you want to get oil that has a higher smoke point than that while you're frying.
Alaska, let me ask you something that I don't think I've asked before on the air, but since you seem to know something about this, I don't have a deep fryer, but once in my life, about a year ago, I sent Marjorie the photo. I attempted to make French fries at home, and I literally almost burnt down the whole neighborhood, not just my own house. What happened?
Oh, no.
Do you know what happened there or what?
My first guess, did your oil overflow from your pot?
What did when it started boiling? It did, yeah.
So you might have had your oil too high in the pot.
Oh, I
because
see.
when you
Yeah, you
add,
gotta be careful.
It might bubble up a bit. So you want to have a high-sided pot with your oil, no higher than like half the pot.
Oh, okay.
And also make sure what you're adding to the oil isn't wet or frozen with ice on it, because that will create a lot of reaction of water particles in the oil.
Alaska, that was
Make sure you're drying, you're patting dry your French fries and removing any ice from anything frozen.
that was hugely helpful. I'm serious. Thank you very much for Alaska from Western Mass.
Now, we all
Thank
heard
you for
about
the
RFK
call.
Jr. and his dead worm in his head, right?
It wasn't dead originally.
No, but it died in
Yeah.
there. We hope it's dead anyway.
it's dead.
Bill from Bridgewater says, I also try to stay away from seed oil as I much prefer brainworm oil in my cooking.
Okay, that's ridiculous. Okay, let's go to Elaine in New Hampshire. Marjorie's really happy with that text. Let's go to Elaine in New Hampshire.
Oh, here's a person who
Okay,
says he
wait,
doesn't
Elaine,
use
hold
any
on.
oils. I just stir fry my veggies. Does that mean I'm going to hell?
You know, I know it's not healthy, but let me tell you something. Would you not agree that if you cook something in butter, well, olive oil is great too. I'm not even going to say what I started to say. Olive oil is great. Well, why are you laughing?
How about motor oil? I found 10W40 is perfect for chicken fried steak.
Who said that? Who
A
said that?
texter.
Okay, who was the texter? Give the
An
person
anonymous
okay.
texter.
Why is everybody text
I
anonymously?
don't know.
What's going to
but
happen?
that was a great one, whoever you are. out
Elaine
there.
in New Hampshire, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi, Elaine.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Long-time listener. Love you guys.
Thank you so much.
So, you're making me laugh,
Yeah.
which is a good thing.
That's
I
a
just
good
got over inventory. I'm dying.
Okay.
Next thing is, I use beef tallow from grass-fed cows on
No.
my skin.
No.
Shut it. It's freaking amazing.
Really?
Yes, really.
Okay.
So wait. What do you
amazing.
mean? To crisp up the skin? Is that what you're talking
No,
about?
make it hydrated.
No,
Right?
oh my God.
Oh, on
It's
your
like a
skin.
salve. You put it on your skin, dude.
Okay, and what happens?
It's amazing.
Okay.
Wait a second.
Now,
That doesn't
Elaine-
tell. Wait, that's not enough, Marjorie.
Okay.
It's amazing in
go
what
ahead.
way, Elaine? How is it amazing?
It makes my skin happy.
Oh. Well, that's actually
Yeah,
beautiful.
It looks good.
Let me tell you, if your
Elaine-
skin's happy,
so
we're
it's
happy.
A good thing.
Well, that's a good thing. Thank you.
Right.
Elaine, it's wonderful
I
to
want
talk
to
to
tell
you.
you,
Thank
though,
you.
I want to tell you, Elaine, the
What'd you say?
dermatologists, the skin doctors say that it's not nearly as good as things that have been more widely tested, like shea butter and mango butter. Shea butter rich in fatty acids, vitamins, deeply moisturizes. Mango butter, lighter weight, is a smoother texture. So they're saying that the beef tallow thing is a little bit of a scam.
Hey, Elaine, let me
But
ask you one
maybe
more
they're
thing.
wrong.
Now that I think about it, if you put beef tallow all over your body, don't animals go when you go out lick you all over, or what do they? Don't they? I mean, that's the problem with it. Elaine, thank you for an excellent call. One of our colleagues said Pennzoil is great for your skin. I think it's in the same category as that anonymous emailer before. 877-301-897. Can we do a serious thing for
no
a second?
synthetic oils in the Pennzoil.
Okay,
our
fine.
staff
I know there are a lot of
The real
RFK Jr.
thing.
fans out there, unfortunately.
Valvoline.
He is wrong on this, according to almost RFK Jr.
Yes.
Almost all scientists say the issue is the quantity of the ultra-processed food that is like you shouldn't be eating. You should eat as little ultra-processed food as you can, even though it's a majority of most Americans' diets. The issue is the quantity of the food that's cooked in it, not so much the use of that and the place things like tallow and whatever are worse.
Now, Elaine is not the only one that we're getting all these emails. Chris in Jamaica Plain, he gets at the farmer's market a lamb tallow cream that cures acne, although the dermatologists say just the opposite, and helps with very dry skin. Yes, they said that tallow, whether it's lamb, beef, whatever it is, clogs your pores.
Oh, that's
it
the opposite.
Makes acne worse, but apparently not for Chris.
Wow.
But it does. It's mostly used for dry skin and rosacea, but again, the dermatologist.
Do you cheap out on olive oil when you buy it, or are you buying the good stuff?
Well, I went to an olive oil store on Beacon Street near my house for Christmas. I'd never been in there. I love the store.
Really?
Yes.
You've got good, everybody, Capone's, which is where you got Fresh Pasta in Somerville.
That's a long way.
They have fat. Well, I mean, you get in a
But
car
I went
and
in
go
there, and they had this olive oil that just arrived, this fresh olive oil that was from Italy, and it was expensive. It was $40 for the bottle.
Wow, how big is the bottle?
I don't know.
Actually, I was going to say we're on radio, but we're not just
I
on
bought
radio
the bottle.
anymore. Now, if you're watching the streaming, do that again. People can see how big the bottle is.
It's about 12 inches.
That is fabulous.
I bought the bottle,
image there.
and I will never go back.
Really?
Oh my God, the difference! Yeah, it's really worth it if you do use a lot of olive oil.
I do use a lot of olive oil.
Yeah, but it's not one of the hateful eight. We should point that out.
The thing we're discussing is that RFK Jr., who is about to lead us to making America healthy again, says we should get rid of the hateful eight, which are seed oils that he says are horrible for us. Not surprisingly, almost the whole science community says he's wrong, and that is not true. But since he's talking about it and he's about to be the head of HHS, probably, we thought we'd bring it up with you. Greta, you're in Gloucester. You're on Boston Public Radio. Thank you very much for calling. Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
So I have used beef tallow after having a great experience with eating a taco at a farmer's market, and I asked them how they made it so delicious, and they said it was beef tallow, and I'm like, is that lard? And they're like, no. And I went back and did some more research. Lard is from pork. Beef tallow is obviously from beef, and a little bit more savory, and that's why they use lard in baking, but using beef tallow is really great. As your previous caller said, it does have a very high smoke point, so especially for applications where you're doing high heat searing and frying like a taco or a fajita, it's really good, and it adds a lot of beefy, deep flavor. But I am also a fan of seed oil, so.
So if you have a choice, it depends on what you're cooking. How do you decide what you use?
It depends on what I'll use beef tallow if I'm doing some beef, or it's really good on roasted potatoes because it kind of gives you kind of like you're faking out the pot roasted potatoes. So, and they sell it at Whole Foods.
They do? I'm actually, I was going to Google that afterwards. On my way home, I am going to buy beef tallow for the first time from Whole Foods and check it out. Hey, Greta, thank you.
With beef tallow, which you know.
No, I don't know.
It's very high in saturated fats. And that's why they stopped doing it at McDonald's, because people were complaining about the fries cooked in the beef tallow, even though they probably did taste better back before the 90s when they switched. So and that's a problem with butter as well.
So are you suggesting I not buy it at Whole Foods on the way home?
You know, I think you got to make these big decisions.
How does the price?
Jim.
What's the price point comparison between beef tallow and Pennzoil? Do you know what the? Do you know which per serving is?
I don't know.
Olive oil. I'm with you, by the way. It's almost you don't fry fries and stuff in olive oil, do you? I don't think so.
I don't know. I'm not much of a cook.
Actually, I don't even know when you fry something. When you actually fry something,
well,
do you
the
ever
previous
use olive
caller
oil?
was talking about high points. I think grapeseed oil has a high
smoke
point where you can get really hot before it smokes. But don't take my word, because I'm not a very good
we
cook.
really are experts on these issues. I think we're really helping.
All I know is
people
that
understand
RFK is
quite a
trying
bit.
to change the way everybody eats.
RFK Jr.
That's right, RFK Jr. And he's got a lot of good points about us eating the wrong things, but I'm not sure he's right about the hateful eight.
No, he's
and
not.
He's certainly not right about vaccines.
Okay.
George and Wesley, Wellesley, thank you for calling.
Hi.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
I love your show.
Thank
you. Can you hear me now?
We can, yes.
So I am a self-proclaimed health nut and steak nerd. And being a steak nerd got myself researching into smoke points. And so I do agree. I went back and forth between tallow and ghee because of the high smoke point.
Oh, ghee,
and when
right.
you look at other oils, like olive oil, for example, you do produce things called aldehydes, ALHEDYDE.
Yeah.
And those are highly toxic, cancerous compounds that you really need to avoid, even just breathing them in, as well as consuming them. So I would say definitely go with for like high temperature cooking. Ghee, I like tallow, but ghee is absolutely incredible. When you cook a steak on a pan with ghee, you can get the perfect crust, and I highly recommend that. But tallow is good for hands when you have extremely dry, cracked hands in the cold. Highly recommend that. But olive oil, to your point, good for ingredient, and using it with high polyphenol content has the most health benefits. So I will say RFK is crazy in a lot of ways, but he seems to know a lot more about health and cooking than a lot of people do in some respects. And he is right about a lot of these things.
But George, in the oil question, though, I think we know that highly processed foods are very bad for you, and he's kind of concluding that they're bad for you because of these oils instead of the other things that are also in them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I think he might be looking at the
100%.
Yeah.
You sound healthy, actually, George, to tell you the truth. Doesn't he sound... George, thanks for the call. Ghee is, what do you call it? What's the clarified... I don't even know what clarified means, but it's clarified butter. Do you know that?
Clarified butter. That's
ghee.
right. Yeah, ghee.
You never heard of ghee?
A friend of mine gave me some clarified butter. Oh, here's the other thing.
You know, by the way, before you go ahead, Anonymous texted out a really interesting thing. You know, Capone's, I mentioned, he was in Somerville. He says, Jim, you can pick up olive oil while looking at the Aurora Borealis in Somerville. It's a twofer kind of thing, so it'd make the trip worthwhile.
Okay.
We have time for one more quick one before Jared comes
Kate
in.
in the car. Kate,
really quickly. Hi, Kate. What's up?
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. So I haven't made the leap to tallow yet.
Yeah.
But I have cut way back on using canola oil. So I cook predominantly with butter and olive oil. But I use coconut oil for moisturizer. I have for months. And I also rub it on my teeth at night. And I have found that it works really well for whitening. And I don't know, I just really like coconut oil for those benefits.
Well, you and Gwyneth
And I think
Paltrow are
RFK
doing the
is
same
gonna
deal.
do good things.
I'm sorry, what was the last thing you said?
I think RFK is going to do great things. We need to give him a chance.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
I don't
but
know.
Okay, Kate,
I don't think he's good on
thanks.
vaccines, Kate.
Yeah. Okay, Kate, thank you for your call. Do you use beef tallow or ghee? What do you use?
So margarine is out. Is this what I'm gathering?
Well, we didn't even talk
Margarine's been out for a while.
It is out, yeah.
Because of the bad. What was the bad
Do they even
thing
sell
in margarine?
margarine
For a
anymore?
while, they said you should switch from butter to margarine, and they said no, margarine's bad. Switch back to
because
butter.
of all the plastics. And
I'm not sure. I think you have to use butter in moderation, right? Because it's
I love butter. I love
highly
olive
saturated.
oil.
I do
That's
too.
where we're butter and olive
Yeah,
oil
we're
people.
butter and olive oil, but I'm trying to keep it. I didn't know I was supposed to keep away from the hateful other 8. Did you know that?
I wasn't aware of the hateful other 8.
Have you ever had beef tallow?
I'm sure, maybe.
Okay, fine.
From what I understand, it was McDonald's in the 80s.
That's
This was
weird.
big
That's
for the
right.
French fries.
Mr.
so
Sokoloff.
I'm sure.
He got them to change.
Do you either of you like saying the word ghee? Because I do.
Ghee.
Ghee, as in,
Why
you know,
did you
clarified
just call
butter.
it clarified butter? Why do you
Because
call it
that's
ghee?
two. It's like 8 syllables.
Oh.
Ghee is one syllable.
The hateful 8, Jared, are canola, corn, cottonseed, soybean, sunflower, safflower, grapeseed, and rice bran oils.
You ever had rice bran oil?
No, but I love butter.
Oh yeah.
I
Well,
love
you said
butter,
that already.
too.
Likes butter.
I just heard that Kerrygold is
And
the best
ghee.
butter that you
Which-
can buy.
oh,
that I buy that
I've
from
had that,
time.
the
It's
Irish
expensive,
butter.
but it is really
It's
great.
really, really good.
Yeah.
Wire
Really
Cutter
good.
loves it. And
It's really good
So
for you.
everything in moderation. Isn't this the whole thing? Everything in
is.
moderation?
That's right.
Except alcohol. Look at the Surgeon General
No,
says
it's gonna
moderation is
mess
okay.
up your heart and give you
Okay,
cancer.
enough out of you.
Too late
Well,
for
what
us,
are you?
Jack.
What are you?
Yeah.
What are you doing here? Oh, what are the
Cheers.
show? What are you doing on the show?
We're going to the New Bedford Art Museum, where there
Oh.
is an fascinating exhibition right now about the Arctic, and this traces how artists and explorers have looked at the Arctic for centuries, and of course it's a very different look now from when it was 200 years ago because of all the melting ice. So Betsy Biggs, the artist, joins us along with
Great
its
name.
director Suzanne DeVeg, and then the New Garden Society. This is a great program working with detained students and incarcerated people to create gardens for both beautiful
what's that
gardens.
called again?
It's called the New Garden Society.
That's great.
And it's all led by the director of horticulture at the Gardner Museum. So we'll talk
that's
about
fabulous.
that. And then, if you've missed all the great critical darlings of 2024 in terms of movies, the Brattle Theater is here with their upcoming series about some of the best movies of 2024.
Huh.
Oh.
What did you think of Nikki Glaser last night?
I thought it was okay.
She was fabulous. Fabulous.
I didn't watch the entire thing, but
She
from
was
what I saw,
fabulous.
Jim liked her because of the Tom Brady roast.
Did you see what she said at Tom Brady roast?
No.
We can't say it here, but Google it. It's a pretty good line.
Google it.
It's pretty great.
Yeah.
Jared, nice to see you. We'll be listening 2 o'clock.
Great to see
Thank
you.
you
Wait,
very
aren't we
much.
supposed? Oh, no, we're not yet. Okay, goodbye. See you later.
Thank you very much, Jared,
Oops.
for coming in. Jared's show is right after the 2 o'clock
It
news.
is.
Yes, it is. Thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio.
You sound a little down
Thanks
over
for
there.
checking out the stream at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to try to do our best with
By the way,
streaming
don't
going
turn
forward.
towards the monitor. I'm looking at you. That's me.
Yeah.
You look fabulous.
I can't see myself.
Well, I'm looking at you, and you look. If you
Turn
turn your
my
head really
to
fast.
look, and it's the back of my head. Doesn't do me
Okay.
any good, Jim.
It's actually.
Keep up with us 24/7 wherever podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're going to be live at the Boston Public Library with Governor Maura Healey for Ask the Governor from 11 to 12. If you're in the area, you can come in and ask her a question yourself. Plus NBC Sports Boston's Tony Casey about the firing of Gerard Mayo, that used to be the coach of the the Bruins. No, oops, the Patriots.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's one. You're
The
going to hit it
Boston-
eventually. The only 2 teams left.
The Boston
Not the
Foundation's
Revs, let me
Lee
think.
Felton and CNN's John King. I want to thank our crews, Ray Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer John LeClaw Parker, our executive producer Jamie Bologna. Stay tuned to the Culture Show with Jared Bowen, starting right after 2. And we want to thank our streaming staff, Bradley Lewis, Colin Cockrell, and Glenn Heath.
Absolutely right.
Who did a great job in the studio.
did.
I'm Marjorie Egan.
Jim Browdy.
Thanks for tuning in. See you tomorrow, I hope. Bye.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And the Museum of Science, where their fun for all ages seasonal exhibit is now open. All aboard trains at